Hello and welcome back to Get Great at Maths. I'm here to help you pass your maths exam, so hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to look at keywords, key formulas and how to gain top marks. So let's get ready to get great at maths. This is a question on sample space diagrams. The keywords in the question are that we have got two fair four-sided dice, and these are going to be rolled. Now you can see in the picture this is what a four-sided dice looks like. Sometimes it may be called a tetrahedron. So if you see those words, that is what you're thinking about. So you've got a dice that can be rolled and it has got four sides, and each side is numbered 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now the two dice are rolled separately and then the scores on the two dice are added together. You have got to complete a sample space diagram to show the possible outcomes from the two dice, and this is worth 2 marks. The key fact you need to know is that a sample space diagram is used to display all possible outcomes. And in this case here, the sample space diagram that we're looking at is a two-way table. So we've got information for the first dice down here on the left hand side, and then along the top we've got the information for the dice along the top. So what you've got to do is add together the two scores and then write your answer in the boxes. Press pause, have a go at drawing out the table and writing down the missing values, and then press play when you have completed the table. Fantastic work, guys. Hopefully you've managed to complete this table. So remember, you were adding together the two scores. So to start with, the first dice had a score of 1 and the second dice had a score of 2. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So you should have written 3 in the first blocks. The next one, I've got the first dice had a score of 1, the second dice had a score of 3, 1 plus 3 is 4. The next one, I've got a score of 1 on the first dice, 4 on the second dice, 1 plus 4 is 5. We're going to keep repeating this process. So now my first score is 2 on the first dice, 1 on the second dice, so 2 plus 1 is 3. You're going to keep repeating this process by adding the different values together and filling in the values. You will start to spot patterns in the values. So the next one is 2 plus 2, which is 4. The next one, 2 plus 3 is 5, 2 plus 4, 6, and you will get 1 mark if you got 7 of these values correct. Then I've got 3 plus 1 is 4, 3 plus 2, 5, 3 plus 3, 6, 3 plus 4, 7, 4 plus 1, 5, 4 plus 2, 6, 4 plus 3, 7, and this is the diagram completed. So this is for your second mark. Now look at the patterns in the number. It starts off with a 2, then the diagonal goes 3, 4s, 5s, 6s, then 7s, then the 8. So look at the patterns in the numbers, and if a pattern doesn't quite fit, then have you made a mistake or are you correct? So make sure you check your answer nice and carefully. Give yourself a tick where each of the marks are awarded for within this question. The mark scheme on this question shows the two-way table that we can see here, or the sample space diagram. These are the missing values. It was worth 2 marks, and B1 is a method mark. So you had to get at least 7 correct in the table in order to get 1 mark for this question. Well done, guys, if you managed to get this correct. Fantastic work. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. The mark scheme on this question shows the two-way table that we can see here, or the sample space diagram. These are the missing values. It was worth 2 marks, and B1 is a method mark. So you had to get at least 7 correct in the table in order to get 1 mark for this question. Well done, guys, if you managed to get this correct. Fantastic work. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on finding probability from a sample space diagram. In part A, you had to work out the values in the table. So you were told you had a 4-sided dice and you had 2 of them. So you can see here the tetrahedron or the 4-sided dice going round, and the sides would be labelled 1, 2, 3, 4. The totals were added and they were recorded in this sample space diagram. Now the key words in the question that we've got to do for part C is that we've got to find the probability that the student gets the same score on both dice. This is worth 1 mark. The key facts that you need to be able to do this are that a sample space diagram is used to display all possible outcomes, and you can see the sample space diagram here. The same score means that both dice have got the same number. So for example, one dice would have a 1 and the other dice would have a 1. And to find my probability is how many we require divided by the total number of outcomes. Press pause, have a go at working out the probability that they've got the same score on each dice, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done, guys. Hopefully you managed to spot there's a pattern. So if I got 1 on the first dice and 1 on the second dice, I'm going to highlight here. I could also get a 2 on the first dice and a 2 on the second dice. I could get a 3 on the first dice and a 3 on the second dice, and a 4 on the first dice and a 4 on the second dice. So we can see there is 1, 2, 3, 4 outcomes which are required. So same score on each dice. So that's 4 out of the total. There are 4 across the top, 4 down, which is out of 16. So we've got 4 out of 16 for 1 mark. Note these numbers are both even, so you could halve the numbers and halve them again, which will give you 1/4, or 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 16 divided by 4 is 4. So either of these answers, writing it as 4 over 16 or 1/4, would give you the 1 mark in the exam. The mark scheme on this question shows that there's 1 mark. FT means follow through. So the answer you got in part A from doing the sample space diagram on your table, if you just worked out the numbers which are the same for your values, then you would get a follow through mark. The answer should be 4 over 16. OE means or equivalent. ISW means ignore subsequent working. So if you got 4 over 16 and then you cancelled your answer down wrong and you said it was 1 over 2, for example, then you would still get the mark because you wrote 4 over 16 first. So that will give you the method mark. This was worth 1 mark, so make sure you know how to get the answer. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question linking the circumference and area of a circle. The key words in the question are the circumference. The circle is 23 centimetres, and you've got to show that the area of the same circle is 42.1 centimetres squared, correct to 3 significant figures. This is worth 4 marks. The key formula you need for this are that the area of the circle is the space inside the circle, and the area of the circle is equal to pi r squared. Now r is the radius of the circle, which is the distance from the centre of the circle to the edge. And pi r squared means pi times the radius times the radius. You can use the square button on your calculator. Now the circumference of a circle, as you can see here on the diagram, is the distance all the way around the edge. Okay, and the circumference of a circle is pi times the diameter, where the diameter is from one edge of the circle to the other, passing through the centre. So the diameter is all the way across the circle, as this black line in the middle is the diameter, and then halfway from the centre to the edge is the radius. Now the diameter, okay, is 2 lots of the radius. So if I take my radius and multiply it by 2, I get the diameter, so it's the total distance. 3 significant figures means 3 digits, not 0. So in this case here, I've got 1, 2, 3 digits for answer 0, so my answer has been rounded to 3 significant figures. Press pause, have a go at working out the answer, then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done, guys. Hopefully you've managed to get yourself an answer and you've managed to show that the area of the circle is 42.1 centimetres squared. So to start with, we're going to look at the information given. So we're told that the circumference of the circle is equal to 23 centimetres. Over here, we know that the circumference is equal to pi times diameter. So that means pi times diameter is equal to 23. Now we need to work out the diameter of this circle, because if I know the diameter of the circle, I can then work out the radius of the circle, and then when I know the radius of the circle, I can use that to work out the area. So to work out the diameter, I've got to get rid of this times by pi. Now the opposite to times by pi is divide by pi, so I'm going to divide both sides by pi, and 23 divided by pi is equal to 7.32 for your first mark. Now, once we've got the diameter, we need to work out the radius. The radius is going to be half of my diameter. So I take my diameter, divide it by 2, and that will give me the radius for my second mark. Now we know the radius, we're going to put it into the formula for the area of a circle. So the area of the circle is pi times my radius, which is 3.66 squared. If you type that into the calculator, that will give me your third mark. You type it in, you get an answer of 42.096. Now remember, we've got to round this to 3 significant figures. So I've got 42.096. So I'm looking at the numbers 1, 2, 3 digits. So I look at the fourth digit, which is the 9. Now the 9 is bigger than 5. So I look to this next number and I have to move it up by 1, which is why it rounds to 42.1 centimetres squared, therefore shown. Make sure if it is a show that question that you just state that you have shown that the formula is equal to what it asks you to work out it's meant to be. So make sure you know how to work out the formula for the area of the circle and the circumference of the circle. You know how to link your diameter and your radius. Make sure you've written down the key facts, highlighted them, put them in a bubble, and make sure you know these formulas. You will need them for your GCSE exam. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 4 marks. M3 means 3 method marks, M1 means 1 method mark, A1 means 1 answer mark. There, 3.66 means using your answer that you got for your radius rather than the actual value of 3.66, so you can still get a method mark for using 3.66 or whatever value you got in your calculation. SC2 means if you wrote down the number 42.09 with no or insufficient working, you will get 2 marks. SC1 means if you wrote down 3.66 or 42.08 or 42.1 or the other numbers that are given with no or insufficient working, you can get 1 mark for that value there. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This question is on using ratio and standard form. The key words in the question are we've got the light from the sun travels 1 kilometre in 3.3 times 10 to the minus 6 seconds. Now this number here, 3.3 times 10 to the minus 6, is a number written in standard form. This times 10 to the negative 6 means it is in standard form. The negative 6 means it is a very small number. And we've also told the distance from the sun to the earth is 1.5 times 10 to the power of 8 kilometres. You've got to work out how long it takes light to travel from the sun to the earth, and you've got to give your answer in minutes and seconds. This is worth 4 marks. Now the most tricky part of this question is making sure that you give the right amount of seconds here rather than giving it in terms of minutes, so be really careful on the second part here. The key facts you need to know is that you're going to be using ratio, and you're going to do the ratio of the distance to the time. And you need to know that 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds, and that will help you convert this second part here. Standard form, is a number written in standard form will always be on the form a times 10 to the power of net n. And if n is positive, you're going to get a large number. So this is going to be a large number. If n is negative, you're going to get a small number. The number of times you move the decimal point will depend on what the number is here. But we are on a calculator question, so you're literally just going to type these values in as you see them on the calculator. There is a times 10 button on the calculator, or you can literally type in times 10 and then use the power button, whichever you prefer. Press pause, have a go at working out the answer, press play when you're ready to hear. Well done, guys. Hopefully you managed to get yourself an answer. So to start with, we're going to look at this ratio between the distance and time. So we're told that the distance is 1 kilometre in 3.3 times 10 to the minus 6 seconds. Okay, so that is the distance from sun. So the light that travels at that speed. Now we're told that the sun to the earth is 1.5 times 10 to the 8 kilometres. So that's a distance. So we've got to work out how do we get from 1 to the 1.5 times 10 to the 8. So how do we go from this value here to this value here? So you should have spotted that you're literally going to be timesing by this value here in standard form, 1.5 times 10 to the 8. So if I do that to the left-hand side, I need to do exactly the same to the right-hand side. So I go to multiply the right-hand side by 1.5 times 10 to the 8. And you're going to type this in on your calculator. So get your calculator ready. Pause if you need to go off and get your calculator. And you're going to type in 3.3. You can press the times 10 button, okay, and then put in the minus 6. Or you can literally type in times 10 and then put the power button minus 6, whichever way you prefer to write it in. Then you're going to times it by this number, 1.5. Then type in times 10 and then put the power button 8. Or you could write it with using the times 10 button, whichever you prefer. Some calculators have EXP, which means times 10. So just make sure you know what your calculator allows you to do. And then press equals and you should find you get 495. And this value is in seconds. So you will get 1 mark for working out 495. Now our answer has got to be in minutes and seconds. So we know over here 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds. So I'm going to work out how many seconds, well, how many this 495 seconds is in minutes. So I've got to divide this 495 by 60. This will give you your second mark. And that will give you 8.25 minutes, which is your third mark. Now, most people manage to get down to this stage fairly okay. But from here, this 0.25 of a minute causes problems converting it into seconds. So 0.25 minutes, we need to work out what this is in seconds. So this is 0.25, and 0.25 is a quarter. So we've got to work out a quarter of 60. Or 0.25 minutes is 0.25 times by 60, which is 15. So basically we're working out a quarter of 60. So half 60, which is 30, half it again gives me 15. Or it is on the calculator paper. You can see we're allowed a calculator. 0.25 times 60 is equal to 15 seconds. So we know we have got 8 minutes and the 15 seconds. So they just need to go in the correct places in the answer box for your fourth and final mark. So make sure you know where these marks are awarded for in the exam. Okay, make sure you mark your answer. Give yourself a tick for where the marks are awarded so you know where these marks are available to you. So you get the maximum marks in your exam. This question shows the mark scheme and there are 4 marks awarded. B3 means 3 method marks, M1 means 1 method mark, OE means or equivalent, SOI means seen or implied, M1FT means 1 mark follow through. So it basically means the value you got for 495, if you divide that by 60, that will give you a 1 method mark. If you didn't get 495 here for the total number of seconds, you got a different value, you would still get the method mark. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on indices. The key words in the question are that you've been given a formula and you have got values k and m which are integers. Okay, so you were told k and m are integers within this formula here, and you've got to work out the value of k and m. It's worth 4 marks. Now the key facts you need to know. The word integer means whole number. So this word here means a whole number. So k and m are whole numbers. We need to know what those values are. And we're going to be looking at some rules of indices. So you can see up here, these little powers up here, okay, are the rules of indices. Okay, so we've got to work out what the rules are. So we know if we multiply two values, so x to the power of a times by x to the power of b, it equals x to the power of a plus b. This is our first rule of indices. The second rule is I've got x to the power of a divided by x to the power of b. It's the same as x to the power of a minus b. Now I'm going to show you how to do this question. I'm going to be just using this rule here, but you could use this rule and the mark scheme uses this rule. Press pause, see if you can work out what the values of k and m are, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer, or if you need some help in able to find these values. Well done guys, hopefully you've managed to have a good go at doing this. Remember, make sure you've highlighted these rules that you've written down over here, stick them in a bubble, make them stand out. Make sure you know what this word integer means as well, so make sure you've written down your key facts. Now to start with, for 1 mark, we're going to look at adding together the powers. So a to the power of k times by a to the power of 8 is this first rule here. Add together the powers and we just write it as k plus 8. From here, I'm going to look at getting rid of the fractions. Okay, so I've got to divide by ma to the power of 5 and I've got to get rid of a divide by 5. So I'm going to get rid of these fractions. So the opposite to divide is times. So I'm going to do something called cross multiplying because they're all multiplied together and divided. I can multiply both sides by 5 and I multiply both sides by ma to the power of 5. So I'm going to get rid of the denominators and I'm going to bring them up to the top right, and the denominator on the bottom right is going to go up to the top left. Now the mark scheme, when you look at the mark scheme later, they have actually combined this a, k plus 8 and the a to the 5 using this rule here. Okay, so the mark scheme's done it that way. It is personal preference as to which way round you do it. You will end up with the correct answer either way, so you choose which way you want to do it. So on the top left hand side, I've got 10 times by 5, which is going to give me 50. I've got 2 times by m, which is just 2m. And then I've got a to the power of 7 times by a to the power of 5. And that is using this second rule here. A to the 7 times a to the 5 is a to the power of 7 plus 5. So using the rule at the top here again, I can add my powers when I put the a terms together. Now from here, I've got a times by 2 and I've got an even number on the left hand side. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So dividing 50 by 2 gives me 25. The 2 disappears on the right hand side, leaving me with m. Now from here, you can see the bit in front of the a, 25, and the bit in front of the a on the right hand side is an m. So 25 is equal to m. So you would get 1 mark for spotting that 25 was equal to m. Now we need to look at the powers. Okay, so k plus 8 and a to the 12. The two powers are going to be equal to each other for these expressions to be equal, which means that k plus 8 is equal to 12 for my third mark. Then to get rid of the plus 8, I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. So that means k is going to be 12, take away 8, which is going to give me 4 for my fourth mark. Make sure you've ticked and marked off where the marks were awarded for this question. There are alternative methods to be able to answer this question. As I said, you could have done a to the k plus 8 divided by a to the 5. So k plus 8 take away 5, that would have given me k plus 3. And then you could have had k plus 3 is equal to 7. Taking 3 from 7 would also give you 4. So it's an alternative method if you'd have looked at the indices on the left-hand side as one combined unit. Or as I've done, I've multiplied up, I've cross-multiplied, making it easier because there's no fractions then, and then I've come through to 4 and 25. You choose which way you prefer to answer the question. The The mark scheme on this question shows the answer is 25 and 4 NFWW, means not for wrong working. So you must have the correct working in order to be able to get the marks for getting 4 and 25. There were 4 marks awarded for the question. 3 method marks is B3, 2 method marks is B2, N1 is 1 method mark. If you found this video useful, please like, share and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on congruency. The keywords in the question are that we've got to state whether the two triangles are congruent or not. And if they are congruent, we've got to give the reason, whether it's SSS, SAS, ASA or RHS. And this is worth 3 marks. Now the key facts are we need to know what the word congruent means. Now congruent means the shape is exactly the same, shape and size. There is no difference between the two shapes. Now the conditions for congruency are SSS, which means side, side, side. So if you've been given any 3 sides, then it will always be congruent. So as long as the 3 sides are always given, it will always be congruent. Side, angle, side. Now this must mean that the triangle must have a side, so like this. The angle must be in between it and then the next side is given. So it must be included between it. So it must go side, angle, side. So that's what SAS means, side, angle, side, where the angle must be between the 2 sides that are given. ASA is when you've got an angle, then a side, then an angle. So you could have the angle here, then a side, then the other angle. So it must be in that order. And they must have the side included between the 2 angles. So it must not be on the opposite side to make it work. And the last one is RHS, which is a right angle, hypotenuse and a side. These are your conditions for congruency. Your hypotenuse is the longest side of any right angle triangle and it's always opposite the right angle. So that's what this word here means within the RHS. Press pause. Have a look at the triangles, see if you can work out which ones they are, which of the 3 have been used, and are they congruent, and give their reason. Press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done guys, hopefully you've managed to look at these triangles and decide which ones they are. So you can see I've got an 8 here, an 8, a 10, a 10, 11 and 11. So you should have written SSS, they are congruent, for 1 mark. So these 2 triangles are congruent because they're exactly the same shape, so it's SSS. The next one we're looking at, we have got an angle of 40, we've got a side, and then we've got an angle of 90. So I've got an angle of 40, I've got a side, and then I've got an angle of 90. So yes, this is congruent, and the reason is angle, side, angle, because I've got an angle, I've got the side included in between it, and the angle here. Don't get confused on this one because it has got a right angle in here, but we haven't been told that value. So the better one to use is angle, side, angle, rather than using RHS. The mark scheme uses this one here, so use the one that they're looking for. So the angle, the side, and then the second angle for your second mark. Now the third one, you can see we've got a 7. So we've got a side, we've got an angle, which are exactly the same. The sides are exactly the same. And then we've got another side. Okay, so we've got 2 sides and then we've got an angle. The triangles look congruent. So you can see here I've got side, angle, side, but the order it goes in is really important because this angle must be between the 2 sides that are given. So I've got a side, I've got an angle, but we haven't been told the length of this side here, so we cannot guarantee it is exactly the same as this triangle over here. So we cannot say it is side, angle, side because the angle isn't between the 2 sides that are given. So this one here is no for your third and final mark. So just be really careful on this last one because it looks like it will be congruent because of where the 2 sides are given and the angles, they look exactly the same shape, but because it is not included between, so the angle isn't between the 2 sides up here, so the top angle here would need to be given to show that it is congruent. Here is the mark scheme. Shows there are 3 marks available. B2 means 2 method marks. B1 means 1 method mark. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on density. The keywords in the question are the mass of the stone is 680 grams. The density of the same object is 1.6 grams per centimetre cubed. And you've got to work out the volume of the stone, and this is going to be worth 2 marks. The units for the answer have been given in the question, so you don't need to worry about any units. The key formulas that you're going to need are the formula for density, mass and volume. Now D stands for density, and if you look at the 2 pictures here that have just appeared, I've got 2 objects, a piece of cheese and I've got a stone. Now the piece of cheese, okay, is less dense than the stone because the cheese has got holes in and the stone is solid. So the stone is much more solid than the cheese. So this is more dense than what the cheese is. The mass is how much it weighs, and the V is the volume, how much space is inside that object. So there is a formula for mass, density and volume where mass goes at the top, density and volume are written underneath. The line in between means multiply for the numerator and the bottom, and then the line in between the D and the V means multiply. Now the question wants us to work out the volume. So this triangle here works like any of the speed, distance, time triangles that you use in maths and physics, or the trigonometry triangles that I use. They all work exactly the same. So you cover up the thing that you want to find. So we want to find the volume, so we're going to cover up volume, and you're left with mass. This line here means divide, and density. So we've got mass divided by density. So volume is mass divided by density. Write down the key formula, write down this triangle, make sure you remember there's a V underneath here and you've written all this down and highlighted it. Press pause, have a go at working out the answer, then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. So well done guys. If you wrote down the formula volume equals mass divided by density and you typed in the value 680 divided by 1.6 because the mass was 680, the density is 1.6, you have got yourself 1 mark for doing 680 divided by 1.6. Then you type that in on your calculator, that will give you 425 for your 2nd mark. Remember to write your answer on the dotted line. Remember, give yourself a tick for where you got the method mark and the answer mark for us to show you know where the marks were awarded in the exam on the question. Please make sure you've learned this formula because it will come up on your GCSE exam. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 2 marks. M1 means 1 method mark for getting the 680 divided by 1.6. OE means all equivalent. So this OE here on the end means all equivalent. So if you did something equivalent to that, you would get 1 method mark for it in the exam. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on converting units. And you've got to convert 1.6 grams per centimetre cubed into kilograms per metre cubed. And these are the key parts of the question. This is worth 1 mark. Now the key fact you need to know is in converting between grams and kilograms to start with. So you can see here I have got grams in the question and kilograms, and you need to know that 1 kilogram is equivalent to 1,000 grams. We also need to know the conversion between centimetre cubed and metres cubed. Now if I draw out a cube which is 1 metre by 1 metre by 1 metre, the volume of this cube is the same as doing 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1 metre cubed. Now if I have the same cube where this distance along the bottom is 1 metre, and now the new distance in centimetres is 100 centimetres. So these cubes are exactly the same size, but instead of 1 metre, I've got 100 centimetres for each of the units. So the length is now 100 times 100 times 100 to work out the volume. So the volume of this second cube, which is exactly the same as this first cube, is 1 million centimetre cubes. So 1 metre cubed is equal to 1 million centimetre cubed. So we're going to be using these facts to help us convert between grams per centimetre cubed and kilograms to centimetre cubed. Press pause, have a go at using these two facts here to help us see if we can work out what the answer is in kilograms per metre cubed. Press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done, guys. Remember, you can use your calculator to help you answer this question. And we're first of all going to look at converting 1.6 grams per centimetre cubed into kilograms per centimetre cubed. Now we know there is 1,000 grams in 1 kilogram. So to convert this grams into kilograms, we have got to divide by 1,000. And you can type this in on your calculator. So 1.6 divided by 1,000 will give you 0.0016 kilograms per centimetre cubed. Okay, because kilograms, if I'm converting 1.6 grams into kilograms, it's going to be smaller, so I'm dividing by 1,000. I now need to convert this 0.0016 kilograms per centimetre cubed into metres cubed. Now we know 1 metre cubed is equal to 1,000,000 centimetre cubed. So I've got 0.0016. So I'm going to multiply this number by 1,000,000, and that will tell me how many kilograms per metre cubed. If you type this in on your calculator, you will find you get 1,600 kilograms per metre cubed, and this is for 1 mark. So make sure you know these two conversions, highlight them, write them down, and make sure you know how to use them. The mark scheme on this question shows there is 1 mark. It can be written as a number as 1,600, or it could be written in standard form. Either answer is absolutely fine. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on expanding two brackets. The keywords in the question are multiply out and simplify. This is worth 2 marks. So the key facts you need to know are that multiplying out means expand. These two words are interchangeable. Generally, they use multiply out on the exam. And basically what multiply out means is multiply every term that you can see by all the other terms. And simplify means collect all the like terms. So remember, when we multiply out, we multiply the first 2 terms together, we multiply the outside terms together, we multiply the inside terms together, and then the last 2 terms together. So expand all those values together, and that will give you your answer. And remember to simplify the x terms that you get in order to get the full 2 marks for the question. Press pause, have a go at working out the answer, then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done, guys. So hopefully you've had a really good go at expanding. So we're going to first of all multiply my 2 x terms together. So x times x gives me x squared. Then I've got x times 5 is 5x. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x. For getting 3 terms correct, you will get 1 method mark. And then negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. Remember to multiply these last 2 terms together, don't add them. From here, we then need to combine the middle 2 terms, which are the x terms. So I've got a plus 5x take away a 4x. So 5 take away 4 is 1, which leaves me with 1x. You can write 1x, or you can just literally write x. So for your second mark, you need to write x squared plus x minus 20. If you put a 1 in front, it doesn't matter. You will still get the mark in the exam. Remember, tick your answers and make sure you know where the method marks are awarded for in the question. Remember, always write down your key facts, what they mean, so you know what to do in the exam. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 2 marks. M1 was for getting at least 3 of the terms. You can see there is a square bracket around this 1 here, which means it is optional. So if you wrote a 1 in there in front of the x, that is absolutely fine. If you didn't write the 1, then don't worry. Doesn't matter. It's better convention to write the value without the 1 in front. So just to write x squared plus x minus 20 for your final answer. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This question is on factorising. The key word in the question is factorise. It is worth 1 mark. And the key facts you need to know to be able to answer this question are that the word factorise means put into 1 or 2 brackets. If you've got 3 terms, you'll be putting into 2 brackets. And if you've got 2 terms, you'll be putting into 1 or 2 brackets. And you can see in this question here, I've got 1, 2 terms. So that means we're going to go into 1 bracket or into 2 brackets. Now, to help us decide whether it's 1 or 2 brackets, we need to first of all look and see if there is a common term. Look at the values in here. Are there anything, or is there a common number or letter that goes into both of these terms? If there is, then it goes into 1 bracket. If there isn't, then you're going to go into 2 brackets. So in this case here, we have got square terms. So look here, I've got a square term and I've got a square term here. So x squared is a square term, 25 is a square number. So that means we're going to be going into 2 brackets on this question. We've actually got the difference of 2 squares. So if you've got square terms here, it's called the difference of 2 squares, which means that you've been given 2 terms, and each bracket you're going to have the same values, but the sign are going to be different in each of the 2 brackets. So the values will be the same, but the signs will be different. Press pause, have a go to see if you can work out what's going on in each of the brackets. Press play when you've got an answer. Well done, guys. Hopefully you've managed to factorise this expression into 2 brackets. So if we look at this expression, we've got x times x gives me x squared, and 5 times 5 gives me 25. So the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 25 is 5. So in the front of each bracket, I'm going to have an x, because x times x gives me x squared. The square root of 25 is 5, so that means one bracket has got a plus 5, and the other bracket has got a minus 5. So when I expand this, I've got x times by x gives me the x squared. X times by minus 5 gives me minus 5x. 5 times by x gives me plus 5x. Plus 5x take away 5x is 0. Then I've got 5 times negative 5, which gives me the negative 25. So if I expanded this term, I end up with this expression here. Remember to write your answer on the dotted line, making sure it is nice and clear. And remember to give yourself a tick once you have checked that your answer is correct. Well done, guys. Here is the mark scheme. It shows there is 1 mark for the final answer, and there's the word condone. So if you missed out the final bracket at the end of the expression, so this bracket here on the end, this word here, condone, means allow. So if this bracket was missing, you were still allowed to get the 1 mark for this question. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on compound interest. The key words in the question are that we have got 1,600 fish. They're released into a new lake which currently has no fish in it. The number of fish is going to increase by 5% every year. You can see the information in the table below. That's what this middle paragraph here tells us about the information in the table. You've got to complete the table and you've got to round your answer to the nearest integer. Remember, an integer is the nearest whole number. Then you've got to write your answers in the boxes here. This is worth 3 marks. The key formula you're going to need to be able to do this question is the formula for compound interest. So the formula for compound interest tells me that the amount is equal to the original amount times by my multiplier. Now this part in the bracket is my multiplier, and the multiplier is worked by doing 100. Now because it is an increase in the question, it says increase, we're going to add on my percentage. We're going to divide by 100 because the percentage is out of 100. And then it's to the power of the number of years. So in this case here, we had 1 year, 2 years. You're going to be working out for 3 years and for 4 years. So you've got to use this formula here to work out the missing values for 3 years and for 4 years. Press pause, have a go at working out the answer, then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done, guys. Hopefully you've managed to work out how to do it for 3 years and for 4 years. So what you needed to do for 3 years, we take our original amount, which is the 1,600. So I've got 1,600 fish, is going to be 100 plus 5, which is my percentage increase, divided by 100 to the power of 3, because it is for 3 years. If you type this into your calculator, you literally type it in as you can see it, and then we need to write in the values for bracket, press your fraction button, 100 plus 5 over 100, close your bracket, all to the power of 3. This is 1 mark if you write this down. Type that in and round it to 1 decimal place. It will give you 1,852 for your second mark. We then need to do the same thing for 4. So we've got, after 4 years, we've got 1,600 times by 100 plus 5 over 100 to the power of 4. And if you round that answer to the nearest whole number, you will get 1,945. So make sure you can round the answers the calculator show you to the nearest whole number, which is the same as the nearest integer, to get the full marks for this question. Well done, guys. Remember to mark your answers and give them a tick to show where you got the marks for on this question. Well done. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 3 marks. B2 means 2 method marks. M1 is 1 method mark. OE means or equivalent. SOI means seen or implied. So these are where the method marks are awarded on this question, so you make sure you understand where you can get the marks. M0 means no marks. So if you just wrote 10% or 5%, then you won't get any marks. You needed to show the full working in order to get the marks like what is shown here, or the way I did it by starting with the 1,600 times by your multiplier to the number of years. There are different ways to get the right answers. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on drawing a graph. The key words in the question are we've got to use the table. So you can see the table on the right hand side over here. This is the answer to part A, so you can see my previous video to explain how to work out the missing values for year 3 and for year 4 on the table. And then you've got to draw a suitable graph. You can see the axis has already been drawn out for you in the diagram, so all you've got to do is plot the coordinates and work out what the graph looks like. And this is going to be worth 3 marks. The key facts of this question are that you're going to be plotting in your x-axis first. So your x-axis is the one coming along the x-axis, in this case the years after release, which is the value at the top here, years after release. Remember, we go along the corridor and then we go up the stairs. So we plot x, then we plot y. So up the stairs we have got the expected number of fish. So we're plotting the years after release against the expected number of fish. Now we're then going to join the points together using a pencil and ruler, or if they're not in a straight line, then you're going to use a nice smooth curve, depending on what the points do. So make sure you use your pencil and ruler if they're in a straight line, or a smooth curve if they're not in a straight line. Press pause, have a go at drawing out the axis, plot the coordinates, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done, guys. Hopefully you've managed to work out how to plot these points. You should have been looking at plotting the number of years after release against the expected number of fish. So to start with, we were plotting the coordinate 0 against 1,600. So across here we've got 0 years, and then we're going to go up the stairs, so up 1,600 to this point here, and then we put a cross. The next one's slightly harder because we're going across 1 year, and then we're going to go up 1,680. So going across 1 is easy, but reading up 1,680, we've got 1,600, 1,650, and then we've got 1,700, but we've got to work out what this scale is going up in. So if you look between 1,600 and 1,650, that's the easiest. You can see we've got 5 little lines. So that means each little gap is worth 10. So we're going up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 to get from 1,600 to 1,650. So each of these little lines is 10. So we want to go up 80, so that's 30 more than 50. So you've got to go up 3 little lines after the 50, 1,650. So you go across 1, then you come across this level to get this point. The next one, we've got 2, and then we've got 1,764. So we go across 2, And then 1764 is slightly harder to plot because we know 1760 is going to be one line above. 64 is just going to be just slightly under half a square, so that's slightly harder to plot there. Then we've got 1852, so we go across 3 years, up 1852, so just slightly more than 1850. Here's the next one. And for plotting 4 points, you would have got 1 mark. For your fourth mark, we would have got 1945 plotted. So that is literally below the 1950 mark, so a half a square below. For your second mark, and for your third mark comes from joining all these points together using your pencil and ruler to join them up with a straight line. Give yourself a tick for where the marks are awarded for in the question, so you can show clearly where the marks were awarded for, so you know how to get the maximum marks in the exam. Here is the mark scheme on this question. You can see there are 3 marks. The mark scheme shows it says a correct curved graph. Now you can see that it says curved, so your answer that you drew was actually a straight line. So a straight line can be used in the mark scheme. They've used the word curved even though it is a straight line, so make sure that you have marked your values off clearly and you understand that in this case here they've used the word curved, but it is actually a straight line, so don't be put off by that. B2 means 2 method marks. M1 means 1 method mark. B0 is no method marks if your points are not clear. So if you didn't mark your points with nice little crosses to show where the points are, then you won't get any marks. If you use little dots, it's not so clear as to where the exact centre of the point is, so a cross is much clearer to make sure where your marks are. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on analysing graph data. Now, you've been given the graph in my previous video, so look back if you want to see how to draw the graph and how to work out the values in the table. But the keywords for this part of the question are that you've got a maximum of 2,000 fish that can live in the lake. And you've got to say what effect you would expect this to have on the shape of the graph after 4 years. So you can see the graph, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 years. You can see it's a straight line for the first 4 years. But what do you think is going to happen after these 4 years? And you have got to work out the answer to this for 2 marks. Now, the key facts for this question are that you have been given 2 marks, which means you have got to give 2 reasons. So the question was worth 2 marks, so you have to write down 2 things might happen after the 4th year. So we know what happens for the first 4 years, it increases in a straight line. But what is going to happen after this point here? What will happen to the shape of the graph? Press pause, think about your answer, and then press play when you're ready to hear your answer. So well done, guys. Hopefully you've realised that by looking at this number of fish, the maximum number of fish is 2,000. Now, up for the first 4 years, we've just kept increasing in a straight line. So initially, the graph will just continue to increase until we get to 2,000 fish. So you will get 1 mark for saying that you're still going to keep increasing. So you can see here the shape of the graph is just keeping going up and up and up for the first 4 years. And then after these first 4 years, it's going to continue to keep going up and up and up. But when we get to this value here, 2,000, we need to think about what's going to happen because we can only have a maximum of 2,000, which means the graph, when it gets to this point here, when we get to 2,000, it won't keep going up because we can only have a maximum of 2,000. So at this point here, when I've got to 2,000, the graph will become horizontal. So it's going to come across at a horizontal line like this, or it's going to flatten out at 2,000, as there can be no more fish in the lake at this point. So we're told there's a maximum of 2,000. So your second mark comes from stating that the graph will now become horizontal. So it'll continue up in a straight line until we get to the point 2,000, and then when we reach 2,000, we're going to go across. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 2 marks. Remember to tick your answers and show where your marks were awarded. So 1 mark for your first reason, 1 mark for your second reason. You were told there is an appendix in the mark scheme, which is a big section right at the end of the mark scheme, which gives the reason, judgment and mark for what is allowed and what isn't allowed. So down here you can see the ones which gives you a mark and the zeros that don't give you a mark. So if you wrote down that the fish will fall as the fish will die, then that will give you 0. If you say that it increases to start with and continues up to the maximum, then you'll get 1 mark out for the part of increasing. But if it goes past the maximum, then you wouldn't get a mark. So you've got to look through all the reasons here, see if your reason was allowed or it wasn't allowed. Remember, mark your answers and tick where you were awarded the marks. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on percentage decrease. The keywords in the question are: we've got a car that is normally £18,000. It has now been reduced by 30%. There's a special offer and the car is now reduced by R%. And the price of the car after the special offer is £9,450. You've got to find the value of R and you must show you're working out. This question is worth 5 marks. The key formula you're going to need to be able to answer this question is the formula for the percentage decrease. And to find our percentage decrease, we need the original amount times by your multiplier. And your multiplier is calculated by doing your percentage, which is out of 100, take away the percentage that is given. Now, the reason it's take away the percentage is because it is a reduction. If it was an increase, you would add it, but because it is a decrease, you are subtracting. And then you divide it by 100 to make it a decimal. So this is called the multiplier here, this section here, and it is calculated by doing 100 take away the percentage divided by 100. So if you multiply your original amount, in this case that is the £18,000, by your multiplier, then that will give you the new price. Press pause, have a go at working out the answer, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done, guys. Hopefully you've managed to work out the value of R. So what we've got to do is we've got to do this formula here for percentage decrease, and we're going to be doing it twice. Because if we do it once, it will tell us how much the price of the car is after it's been reduced by 30%. And then we do it again, and then that will tell me the price after the special offer. Or we know the price after the special offer is £9,450, but it will help us work out this value of R. So we're first of all going to put the values into this formula. So the car price in the sale, okay, so my sale price is going to be the normal price, the original amount, which is this £18,000, times by my multiplier, which is going to be 100, take away the percentage, which was 30%, divided by 100. Now you can literally type this in the calculator because it is a calculator paper, and it will give you 1 mark. If you find it useful, you could put brackets around this fraction here to make it easier to type in, but it's not necessary. Once you've typed that in on your calculator, remember to use your fraction button here, the two squares above each other, then just press equals and it will give you 12,600, and that is your second mark. Now from here we've got to go again. We've got a special offer now. Now the special offer, the car is reduced by R%. So this is the original amount now, so 12,600. I'm now going to multiply it by R%, or I'm going to work out my multiplier when the percentage is R%, and that is going to equal the 9,450. So my special offer is the answer we just got for 12,600 times by my new multiplier, which will be 100 take away R, because the new amount has been reduced by R, divided by 100. And we know our special offer is going to be 9,450. So that's going to equal the 12,600 times by 100 minus R, all over 100 for your third mark. From here, we need to work out what this 100 minus R is. So we're going to get rid of this times by 12,600, and we're going to get rid of the divide by 100. Now you could do this in 2 steps, or you could do it in 1 step. It is personal preference. But as you've got a calculator, it's fairly easy to do it in 1 step. So first of all, to get rid of this 12,600, we're going to do the opposite, which is divide by 12,600. So on your calculator, you need to type in 9,450 divided by 12,600. Then we need to get rid of this divide by 100. So the opposite to divide by 100 is multiply by 100. And the answer you've now got on your calculator, if you times that by 100 and press equals, you should find you get 75. So this is your fourth mark. So if you get 75 is equal to 100 minus r, we have got 4 marks. From here, we now need to find the value of r. So 100 take away something is going to be 75. Or we can think about solving it. So to get rid of minus r from both sides, I'm going to add r to both sides. To get rid of plus 75, I'm going to subtract 75 from both sides. So if I do 100 take away the 75, that will give me the value of r for your fifth and final mark. Remember, write your answer on the dotted line and give yourself a tick where the answers are awarded. So everywhere I've written 1 mark, you need to write down where the method marks are awarded for the question so you know how to get the method marks in the exam to make sure you get the full 5 marks for this question. The mark scheme shows there are 5 marks for this question. B2 are 2 method marks for getting the 12,600. M1 is a method mark for getting to this stage here. OE means or equivalent. You can see the method that I used was doing 100 take away 30 divided by 100. Now 100 take away 30 is 70, so I did an equivalent method because I never wrote down 70 over 100. So if you got that answer there, you would get an equivalent mark for getting your method mark for this stage here. M0 is no marks. So you've got no marks if you just wrote down 70% of 18,000. Down here, we've got 2 method marks for using a different method to what I did. So this method here is using the percentage change formula. So the original amount take away the final answer divided by the original, make it a percentage times by 100. So the percentage change formula has been used here. The method I used is down here on the right hand side. B2 M1 is for leading to getting an answer of 75, which is what we did. So from rearranging this formula here, still gives you the same method marks, it's just an alternative method. It is personal preference as to which way you prefer to do the answer. Just beware if you didn't get any, if you just wrote down a final answer, so you got 0 because you didn't write down any method marks, and you got the answer of 25%. SC2 means you will get 2 method marks awarded for getting an answer of 25 with no or insufficient working. So if your working wasn't good enough or you didn't have any working, you can only get a maximum of 2 marks for the question, even though you got the answer correct. Down here, you will get 1 mark for getting an answer of 0.25, 0.75 or 75% with no or insufficient working. So these are where method marks are awarded if you didn't show your working. But on a 5 mark question, it is really worth showing your working out, especially when it says make sure you show your working, otherwise you won't get the method marks in the exam. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on volume and surface area, and we're going to be linking the 2 formulas that we have got for volume and surface area. Now the key words in this question are that we've got the volume of a prism. Now this shape here is the prism. The reason it is a prism is because it has got the same shape running at both ends. So you can see on the front side we've got a triangle, and the back end we've also got a triangle. So the same shape is running all the way through, which means it is classed as a prism. Pyramids come up to a point, so think of Egypt where the pyramids are. You get a pyramid coming up to a point, but a prism has got the same shape going all the way through it. We're told that this volume is equal to the volume of the cube, and you can see the cube drawn over here. You've got to work out the surface area of this cube, and you must show your working in order to get the full 6 marks for this question. So if you don't show your working, you cannot get full marks, even if you get the answer correct. So if you just write down an answer and it happens to be correct, you cannot get the full marks if you do not show your working out. Now the key formula you're going to need for this question. You need to know the formula for the volume of a prism. Here is my prism. So it says it is the area of the cross section times the length. Now this cross section is the area of the shape on the end. So in this case here is going to be the area of the triangle times by the length of the triangle. So specifically for R1, the volume of the triangular prism is going to be the area of the triangle, which is a half the base times the height, times by the length of the shape. So here's my length, my base, and my height. You can see I'm just highlighting for you to help you. And then we've got to work out the volume of a cube. Now we know a cube is basically a square, which is 3D. And all the sides on the cube are exactly the same length. So if this is L, the side is L, the other side is L, this side is L. All of the sides on this shape are all going to be L. So the volume is L cubed. And to work out the surface area, it is the total areas of all the faces. So you can see here, this is my front face that I'm highlighting. I've got a side face, I've got a top face, and then I've also got some hidden faces. So I've got a back face that's hidden, I've got a face on the left that's hidden, and then I've got a face underneath, which is also hidden. So in total, there are 6 faces. So we've got to work out the surface area. Now the surface area is all of these faces added together. So one face is going to be L times by L, which is L squared. So the front will be L squared, but I've got 6 of these because I've got the front and back, top and bottom, left and right. These 6 sides together, when you add them together, multiply them together, so 6 times my L squared will give me the total surface area of the cube. So you just work out the area of one of them and then multiply it by 6 because they are all the same. These are all the key facts that you are going to need to answer this question. So have a go at thinking about how to do this question, press pause and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done guys, hopefully you've managed to work out how to work out the surface area of this cube using all these formulas that I've given to you here. So to start with, we're going to look at the volume of the prism. So the volume of the prism is the area of the triangle, so it's half the base times by the height. Now we are allowed a calculator for this question, but you can see it's half of 16, which is 8, times by 12. And then you're going to multiply that answer by 18. That will give me the volume of the triangular prism. Now, if you just write down that formula, that will give you 1 mark. So I said you're allowed a calculator on here, so you can type in a half times 16 times 12 times 18, or you can type in 0.5 if you prefer, rather than writing and using the fraction button and typing in the half. Press equals, and you'll get 1,728 for 1 mark. So we've got 2 marks so far just for working out the volume of this prism. From here, we're told that this volume is equal to the volume of the cube. So we know the volume of the triangular prism equals the volume of the cube. And we know the volume of a triangular prism is 1,728. We know the volume of a cube is up here, L cubed. So 1,728 is going to equal L cubed. Now we've got to work out L. So the opposite to cubing is cube root. So the cube root of 1,728 will give you your 3rd mark. Now if you cube root this number on your calculator, you will find that you get the answer of 12, which is your 4th mark, which means that one of these sides of this cube is going to be 12. So every side on this cube is going to be a length of 12, and your 4th mark is for writing down the number 12. From here, we've got to look at the total surface area. So we can see the formula for the total surface area is going to be 6 times by my L squared, where L is going to be 12. So we've just got to work out 6 times by 12 squared. And again, you will type that in your calculator. Writing it down gives you your 5th mark. Typing it in and writing down the answer it gives you is 864, which is your 6th mark. Remember to always write your answer on the dotted line to make sure your answer is nice and clear. So you've got 6 marks here for working out the surface area of the cube. You can see there are lots of formulas here that you need to remember and know and recall for the exam. So make sure you have highlighted all these formulas and you have written them down so all your key facts and formulas are in one place. So make sure your work is nice and clear. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 6 marks. M1 is 1 method mark, A1 is 1 answer mark. There means using the answer you got for 1,728. So if you made a mistake, then that's fine. If you got no marks, 1 mark or 2 marks earlier on, you can get a maximum of 3 marks for getting 864. So getting the final answer with no or insufficient working. So if you didn't get any marks for any method marks, then you could still get an answer mark, 3 answer marks out of the 6 marks for getting the correct answer. If you got any of these values here that you can see that I'm highlighting at the minute, you would have got 2 marks with no working or insufficient working. And the last one, for 1 mark, if you wrote 1728 or the cube root of 3456 or 15.1 with no or incorrect working, that will give you your 1 mark for just writing down those values. But make sure you must show you're working out. The mark scheme clearly says it's the answer 864 with correct working. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. Remember to comment below to let me know what you want to see next. This is an algebra and ratio problem. In this question, it is quite a wordy question and you need to make sure that you have read the question really carefully so you know exactly what you have to do. The key words from this question are that we have got 3 people, Amir, Beth and Charlie, and they're going to share the amounts of tips they get between them in the ratio matching the number of hours they worked that week. We're told that Amir, and we're going to call that A, was £25.40. That's how much he got. Beth worked twice as many hours as Amir, and Charlie worked 5 more hours than Amir. So these 3 facts here, one of them is to do with a cost, and the other 2 are to do with hours worked. You're told that the total hours worked is 85 hours. So the bottom 3 are all to do with time, and the top one is to do with money. You've got to calculate the total amount of tips received, and then you must show you're working out for 6 marks. Now the key facts. The steps that you need to be able to answer this question. First of all, you need to work out how many hours for each person. So we're going to be using this fact here. How many hours does each person work in relation to Amir? Step 2, you've got to work out formulas for the total hours. So when you add together Amir, Beth and Charlie, or A, B and C, you've got to work out the total. In this case, it is 85. Step 3, you're going to substitute the answer you got for 1, so all the values for Amir, Beth and Charlie, then you're going to substitute those answers into the equation you got in step 2. Then you can work out how many hours each person worked. Now you know how many hours each person worked, you can write that as a ratio. Once you've written that as a ratio, you can then use that ratio to work out the tips for each person, because we know for Amir, he earned £25.40. So you've then got to use the ratio between the amount of hours that Amir worked and the amount of money he got to then work out the amount of money for each person, and then you can add up the total amount of money for each person to find the total tips, which is what the question is asking. Calculate the total tips received each week. Remember, you must show your working in order to get the full marks for this question. This is a tricky question, so make sure you've read the question carefully. You have understood the 7 steps that you've got to take in order to be able to answer the question, and then make sure that you have a go at doing the question. Press pause. When you've got an answer, press play and we'll show you how to do it. Well done, guys. Hopefully you've managed to work out an answer here. So we're going to start with step 1. And for step 1, we've got to work out how many hours each person works. So Amir just worked 8 hours. We don't know how many hours that is. We're just going to call it A. Beth worked twice as many hours as Amir. So that means B is equal to 2 lots of A. So Beth is equal to 2 lots of Amir. So B is equal to 2A. Charlie worked 5 more hours than Amir. So when it says more, that means add. So Charlie is equal to Amir plus 5. And if you've got these 3 worked out, you will get 1 mark for working these 3 out. From here, we've got to look at step 2, which is writing down the formula for the total hours. So for my total hours, if I add together Amir plus Beth plus C, or A plus B plus C, the total is 85. So for writing these down, we've then got to substitute in the values we've got for A, B and C. So A is just A, but instead of writing B, I can write 2A. And instead of writing C, I can write A plus 5. So I'm going to substitute those values in for my second mark. So A plus 2A for Beth plus A plus 5 for Charlie is going to equal 85 for your second mark. From here, we need to solve this to work out the value of A. So I've got 1A plus 2A plus 1A, which is the same as 4A. Remember, if there's no number written in front of the A, we can put a 1 there. So I've got 4A plus 5 is equal to 85. I need to get rid of a plus 5. The opposite to add 5 is subtract 5. So 4A is going to equal to 85, take away 5, which is 80. From here, I need to find the value of A. So 4 times something is equal to 80. So the opposite to times by 4 is divide by 4. So 80 divided by 4, you can halve it and halve it again, will give you a value of 20. So Amir earned or worked for 20 hours. So A is equal to 20. So Amir worked for 20 hours, and that's how long he worked. From here, we can now work how many hours Beth worked. So Beth worked twice as many hours. So twice of 20, 2 times 20 is 40. So B is equal to 40 hours. And Charlie worked 5 more hours than Amir. So that is going to be my 20 hours plus 5 is going to be 25 hours for Charlie. Now I've got the values of the hours, I can write these steps in a ratio. So this is going to be step 5, writing the hours as a ratio. So my ratio is going to be 20 to 40 to 25 for the hours worked as a ratio for A to B to C, or Amir to Beth to Charlie. Now we know Amir got paid £25.40. So we can write that under the amount for Amir. We now need to work out how to get from 20 to £25.40. So when we're doing ratio, we take the number underneath divided by the number above. So 25.4 divided by 20 will give me 1.27. So if you multiply 20 by 1.27, that will give you 25.4, and that is your next mark. So far we have got 1, 2, 3, 4 marks out of the 6 marks. Now, if I multiply 20 by 1.27 to get 25.4, I need to do the same to the other two numbers. So 40 times by 1.27 will give you 50.8. Remember, you're allowed the calculator on this question, so you can just type it in on your calculator. And then 25 times 1.27 is going to be 31.75 for your fifth mark. From here, we need to work out the total amount of tips. So this is pounds. So £25.40, £50.80 and £31.75. These are the amounts of money earned in tips. So we've got to work out the total, which just means add. So we add these values up for the total tips, and that will give you £107.95 for your sixth and final mark. Remember, you're allowed a calculator, so you can literally just type these values into your calculator to get an answer. Make sure you state your answer clearly on the dotted line, and you have said clearly the total amount of tips earned. So you have said what you were doing as you go along. So make sure you show you're working, and make sure your working is clear. Remember to tick your answer and show where the marks were awarded. So tick where the marks were awarded for this question, so you can see clearly where the 6 marks were awarded on the question. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 6 marks. The correct answer is £107.95. It does say with correct working, so you must show your working. B1 is a method mark, M1 is another method mark, A1 is an answer mark, so you must show that answer. The word OE means or equivalent, so if you've got a different answer or the value of 1.27 times by 85, if you worked out that answer, that's an equivalent answer. The word there means using the answer you got for 25. So if you've got a different answer to 25, then as long as you use that answer, then you will still get a method mark later on. Here, this is what happens if you didn't show your working out. So if there's no working or insufficient working and you got an answer of 107.95, so you've got the correct answer without writing down any working, you can only get a maximum of 2 marks. Here, if you've got an answer of 20 hours with no or insufficient working, you can get a maximum of 1 mark. So it is really important that you show your working and you know where the method marks are awarded for on the question, and you use your method working, and what you type in on the calculator is what you type in right down on your paper. So you must show your working as you go along. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on probability. The keywords in the question are linked to this table. So we have got the score and probability given in the table. So if you score a 1 on this spinner, the probability is 0.4. You can see that this is the largest section on the spinner, so you get the largest probability. The probability of getting a 2 is 0.3. You can see the section for the 2 is slightly smaller than the section for the 1, so the probability is less. The probability of getting a score of a 3 is 0.2 because this is the next largest size. And then the probability of getting a 4 is 0.1 because this is the smallest size section. So the keywords are that the spinner is spun twice. So it's spun round once and the arrow points to a value, then it's spun around again and it points to a different value. You've got to calculate the probability that the student gets the same score on each spin. So when the spinner spun, first of all, it lands on a 2, it's spun again, and it lands on a 2 again. What is the chances of that happening? And that is worth 4 marks. So that's what the question's asking us to find. We've got to work out how to do that. The key facts. The word and in probability means multiply. The word or means add, and these two key words are really, really important. So when you're working out the probability and you want to get the probability of getting the same score, and you want the probability of getting a 2 and you want the probability of getting a 2, so this word here means you're going to be multiplying. When you want the word or, you're going to be adding. So to start with, you're going to be doing some multiplying and then you're going to be doing an adding. It's a calculator paper, question, so you can use your calculator to help you. Now the probability must always be written as a fractional decimal. These values are given as a decimal, so you're likely to just give your answer as a decimal because the question is given in terms of decimals. A notation we're going to be using is P, then brackets 1. Now P of 1 means the probability of getting a 1. So the score of getting a 1 is just the way we're going to write our notation. Press pause, have a go at working out the answer, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done guys, hopefully you've managed to work out how to work out the score of getting the same score on each spin. So to start with, we're going to look at probability of getting a 1 on both spins. Okay, so that's a probability of 1 on the first spin and probability of 1 on the second spin. So the probability of getting a 1 on the first spin is 0.4, and I've got to get a 1 on the second spin is also going to be 0.4. So my probability is 0.4 times by 0.4 because it's a probability of getting a 1 and a probability of getting a 1. Now 4 times 4 is 16. There are 2 numbers after the decimal point, so there's got to be 2 digits after the decimal point here, which is 0.16. So we could do that easily without a calculator. This is worth 1 mark. We've now got to do the same for each of these probabilities. So now we're going to look at probability of 2. So probability of getting a 2 is 0.3, and the probability of getting another 2 is also 0.3. So this time I've got to do 0.3 times 0.3, which is 0.09. Again, 3 times 3 is 9, 2 digits behind the decimal point, so 2 digits behind the decimal point here, making it 0.09 for your second mark. Again, this is fairly easy to multiply without a calculator, even though you're allowed a calculator in the exam for this question. The next one, we're going to work out the probability of a 3 and a 3. So probability of getting a 3 is 0.2, and a probability of 3 again is another 0.2. So I've got 0.2 times 0.2 because the word and means multiply, which is 0.04. 2 times 2 is 4, 2 digits behind the decimal point, 2 digits here behind the decimal point, so we have to have it as 0.04. The last one we're going to look at is the probability of getting a 4 and a probability of a 4. So the probability of a 4 is 0.1 and the probability of getting another 4 is also 0.1. So that is going to be 0.1 times 0.1, which is 0.01. From here, I've got to work out the probability of getting a 1 on both dice, or the probability of getting a 2 on both spinners, or the probability of getting a 3 on both spinners, or the probability of getting a 4 on both spinners. This word here means add. So the word or means we're adding. So the probability of getting the same score is 0.16 plus 0.09 plus for 0.04 plus for 0.01 for your third mark. So the answers we've just worked out here, we're just adding these values together for your third mark. Then for your final answer mark, we just add these values together. Again, you've been given a calculator, but without a calculator, 0.16 plus 0.04 is 0.2. 0.09 plus 0.01 is 0.1. 0.2 plus 0.1 is 0.3. Fairly easy to work out without a calculator for your fourth and final mark. Make sure you write your answer on the dotted line to make sure your answer is nice and clear. Remember, always give yourself a tick for where the marks are awarded so you can clearly see where the method marks are awarded so you know how to get maximum marks in the exam when you come to do it on your own. The mark scheme on this question shows the answer is 0.3. OE means all equivalent. So if you'd have written it as a fraction, 3/10, for example, you would still get the method marks or the answer marks. NFWW means not for wrong working. So if you got the answer of 0.3, just because you'd written 0.3 down as a value out of a table and there was no method marks or showing you how you got your answer or anything, you would not get the marks on this question. So you had to have the correct working in order to get the full marks for this question. There were 4 marks available on this question. M3 is 3 method marks, M2 is 2 method marks, and M1 is 1 method mark. So you can clearly see where the method marks were awarded for on the question, and you cannot get full marks without showing the correct working out for this question. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on looking at different combinations. So the keywords in the question are we've got a registration plate on a car and it has got 2 letters. So if you look at the beginning of this picture here that is drawn, the first 2 values here are letters. So A and B, these are the first 2 letters. Then you're told you've got a number from 10 to 99. So these are the next 2 digits. And then it's followed by 3 letters. So here, C, D, E, these are the last 3 digits. And this is how any number plate on a car is made up. Now we're told that the letters I and the letters 0 are not used. The reason these aren't used is because I and 1 and O and 0 are very similar to each other. So these letters aren't used in number plates. Which leaves us with 24 possible letters. So for every time we've got a letter here, it could be one of 24 for each letter that is used. And you've got to show that there are approximately 720 million possible ways of rearranging the registration plates. This is worth 4 marks. Now your key facts that you're going to need to be able to help you answer this question. The number of possibilities, you're going to have to multiply all the different numbers of options to get your number of possibilities. So you've got to multiply the number of options for position 1, position 2, position 3, position 4, position 5, position 6 and position 7. So you're going to be multiplying 7 numbers together to work out the total number of outcomes to see what the total number of car registration plates are. Now that it says the word approximately. Now our answer is 720 million. So this approximately means that this answer that you get here has been rounded to two significant figures, and that is 2 digits that are not 0. So I've got the 7 and the 2 are non-zero, the rest of the digits are 0. So you've been rounded to two significant figures, and that's what this word approximately here means. Now you've got 720 million. Remember that 1 million is 1 with 6 zeros afterwards. These are all the key facts that you need to be able to work out the answer to this question. Press pause, have a go at working out the answer, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done, guys. Hopefully you've managed to get an answer and you have worked out that there are 720 possible car registration plates. So that's what you're trying to do, show that there are 720 million possible outcomes. So to start with, we're going to look at the letters. So the first two letters, I've got the letter A and I've got the letter B. You're told in the question there are 24 possible letters. So for the first letter, I've got here a letter A. There were 24 different letters I could have used instead of a letter A. The second letter, I've got the letter B. Again, there were 24 different options I could have had for the letter. So if we multiply 24 by 24, you are allowed a calculator on this, and that gives you 576. We're now going to look at the numbers. So these are the digits here, the 5 and the 6. Now you're told we have got a number from 10 to 99. So this first digit here, the lowest digit it could be is 1, and the highest digit it could be is 9. Now if I do 9 to 1, okay, and work out how many different numbers you've got there, you have got 9 different options. So you've got number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is 9 options. So you can count up and see there were 9 different options there. Now, if we're looking at the next one, we could start with a 0. Okay, so it doesn't start with a 1 this time, it starts with a 0 because it's going between 10 and 99. So we get an extra value, which is 10. So I've got 9 times 10, which gives me 90 for the number of numbers, and you will get 1 mark for doing 9 times 10. We then need to look at the letters next. So for each possible value for the letters, I have got 24 for the C, 24 for the D, and 24 for the E. So I just need to multiply these together for my 3 letters, 24 times 24 times 24, which is 13,824. So to work out the total possible car registration plates, I need to multiply all these answers together to get the total, because I've got to do for the 2 numbers, the number, and the 3 letters. Multiply these 3 things together will give me the total possibilities. And you will get 2 marks for getting to this stage here by multiplying all these different values together. From here, if you type this into your calculator, you will find you get 716,636,160. And we have got to approximate this answer and show it is 720 million. So I'm going to look at 2 significant figures. So after the second digit, so I've got the 7 and 1 are the first 2 digits. This is my first significant figure, my second significant figure. I look at the third value, which is the 6, and the 6 will tell me whether I've got to round up or down. Now 6 is larger than 5. So because it is larger than 5, it is going to round up, which will make this 1 into a 2. So I end up with 720 million. This is your 4th mark. You can write that in words as 720 million for your final mark. Remember, tick your answers to show where the marks were awarded for this question, and make sure that you have said that you have shown this, because the question says show that the answer is 720 million. So make sure you've made your answer nice and clear for the examiner to see. The last thing of this question shows that there are 4 marks. You can see B1 is a method mark for getting the 9 times the 10 or writing 90. And you also need to get 2 marks for getting 24 times 24 times there. Now the word there means the answer you got for 90. So say you did 9 times 9 because you forgot one of the values or miscounted, or 8 times 9 or whatever values you did. You will get a method mark for using your value of 90 and then times by the other 24s for each of the places. OE means or equivalent. M1 means there's 1 method mark for getting any of these values here. This box here shows that if you get 0 or 1 score, you can get 2 method marks for getting this answer. So if you didn't write down how to get your answer, you didn't show your working, you can get 2 marks for writing down 716,636,160. Or if you didn't show any working and you just wrote down 26 times 26 times the value you got for 90 times 26 times 26 times 26 because you'd misread the question and thought there were 26 letters in the alphabet, forgetting that the I and the 0 had been taken out, or I and O had been taken out, you would get 1 mark for doing that. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. In this question, we're going to be looking at sketching a trig graph that has been transformed. Now, the key words in the question are we've got to sketch. And when we sketch, it means that you have to do it freehand. So it means that you're not using a ruler as you're drawing this, you're just using freehand, but you need to make sure you include the key points at 90, 180, 270, 360, 450, 540, 630 and 720 where the graph is crossing. The graph of y equals cos x minus 1 between 0 and 720, and this is worth 3 marks. Now, the key facts that you need to be able to answer this question are what the trig graphs actually look like. You need to know the shape of the trig graphs, and you need to know that they repeat every 360 degrees. So what happens between 0 and 360 will just be exactly the same between 360 and 720 because the graphs repeat every 360 degrees for the sine curve and the cosine curve. Now, with the sine curve and the cosine curve, the amplitude, which is the maximum height the graph goes to, is an amplitude of 1, which means you've got a maximum height of 1 and a minimum height of -1. The cosine graph will start at the point 0, 1, so the coordinate 0, 1, and the sine curve will start at the point 0, 0. Now, you'll be expected to know what the cosine graph looks like. And you can see down here in this little picture that's animated, the sine and the cosine graph are being linked to the unit circle that is down here and showing how these two graphs are actually formed. Now, the cos curve starts at the coordinate 0, 1. It comes down and hits the graph here at 90. Then at 180 it hits the bottom. Then at 270 it comes back to the axis. And then at the top it goes back up to 360 at the point 1. So this curve will repeat between 0 and 360, and it'll do exactly the same when we go between 360 and 720. But the graph you've got to draw is the graph of cos x take away 1. So think about what the graph of cos x looks like and see if you can work out what this -1 will do to this graph here in relation to the axes that have been given. Remember in our transformations that if y is equal to f of x, then if I've got a function of y equals f of x plus a, this is the same as a translation of a units in the y-axis or 0a. So that means that this graph, if it's got plus a, it will be shifted up by a units in the y-axis. So what does this -1 here on the end do to this graph of y equals cos x? Remember, you've got to go between 0 and 720, whereas this graph here is between 0 and 360. Press pause, have a go at drawing out the axis, using a pencil and ruler, and then using your pencil to draw the graph between 0 and 720. Press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done, guys. Hopefully you've managed to get the answer and you have drawn a graph between 0 and 720. So this -1, we have got a plus a, which means it moved up by a units, but we've got a -1. So instead of starting at 0, 1, our start point is going to be at 0, 0, because all of these points that are drawn on this graph are going to move down by 1. So instead of starting at 0, 1, I'm going to start at the point 0, 0. By the time I come to 90, I've moved down from 0 down to -1. So I'm going to go from here, 0, down to -1 at 90. Then at 180, which is here in the middle, I can see I was at the point of -1, so I'm going to go down 1 further. So I'm going to start here at 0, go down to -1, then I'm going to go down to -2. Then it's going to repeat what I've just done the opposite way. So it's going to come back up to -1, and then it will come back up to 360, where 0 is the maximum value. So this curve is like a bell coming down here, and then it will repeat up to here. Now the sketch means you do it freehand, so I would just put a little mark where each of these points are, where it's going to cross. And then the graph will repeat exactly the same for the next section of the graph, with exactly the same as what we've just done. But you've just got to join it together with a smooth curve to get your 3 marks. The graph you should have drawn should be looking like this. So we start at the point 0, 0. At 180, it comes down to, sorry, at 90, it comes down to -1. At 180, we're at -2. At 270, we're at -1. And at 360, we're back up to 0. Now you will get 1 mark for getting a graph going between a maximum value of 0 and a minimum of -2 or -2. A mark for getting the shape of the graph correct and drawing it with a nice smooth curve. And also a mark for having a maximum value at 360 and 720. So you can see here at the point 360, I'm at a maximum point here, and also at the end at 720, I'm at a maximum. If you look at the shape of the curve between 0 and 360, it's exactly the same as between 360 and 720. So look at your points carefully, make sure you've marked them off so you can see clearly where these points are awarded. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 3 marks. B1 is a method mark for showing the shape of the curve. Another B1 for showing that the minimum was at -2 and the maximum was at 0. And the third mark between 360 and 720 in your x-axis. So this is the shape of the graph that you should be drawing. So make sure you have drawn a nice clear sketch using a pencil to make sure that you have drawn it accurately. Make sure the sketch is nice and smooth and it's just one continuous line. You don't need to draw lots and lots of lines over the top of each other. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on how to draw a cumulative frequency table. The keywords in the question are that we've got 80 cyclists, and this 80 that is told to us is going to be really, really important, because if you do it correctly, the number that appears in the bottom right hand corner here will be the same as the total number of cyclists. And we've got to complete the cumulative frequency table, and this is going to be worth 2 marks. Now the key facts are that you need to know that the word cumulative means add up. So your cumulative means you are adding up your totals as you go along. So look at these totals here. You're going to be adding them up, and you want to know the time for how many people in total are less than 25, which is 5. You can see is here. You've now got to work out the total time for how many people are less than 30. So you've got to work out how many people in total. So the frequency means how many people in total are less than 30. So you've got to work out a cumulative value. So add the values up. Then you've got to work out how many are less than 35, all the way up to 50. Press pause, draw out the table and have a go at completing the missing values in the table. Press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Fantastic work, guys. So you can see from the table less than 25 is 5. So that's the first value and it has been completed for us. But we've now got to work out less than 30. So there are 15 less than 30 between 25 and 30, but there are also 5 between 20 and 25, which is also less than 30. So total less than 30 is the 5 plus the 15, which is going to give me 20. Now I need to work out how many are less than 35. So less than 35 is between 30 and 35 is 24. I've also got 25 to 30 is also less than 35, and 20 to 25 is also less than 35. So all these 3 values here added up is the answer you're looking for. Now we've already added together these last 2 values. So the 5 plus the 15 was 20. So I'm just going to take the 20 I've just worked out and then add on the new one. So it's just going to be 20 plus 24, which takes me to 44. So there are 44 people in total, less than 35. Next, we're looking at less than 40. So we're following a similar strategy. So less than 40 is anything below 40. So it's these four values here added together. Remember, we've already added up the first three values, which was 44 here. So it's just going to be 44 plus the new value, which is 25, which takes you to 69. Next, we're going less than 45. So that is everything lower than 45, or everything above this 7. And again, we already know the value of the first four added up was 69. Add on the new 7, which gives me 76. The last one comes from adding all of them together. And when you add them all together, the answer should be 80 because it tells you in the question there were 80 cyclists. So if you've added them up correctly, this 76 plus 4 gives you 80. So this is correct. Now this question is worth 2 marks. You get 1 mark if you got one mistake in any of these values. So if you made a mistake at any point in these values, you get 1 mark, and getting through to an answer of 80 is your second mark. Make sure you're using the mark scheme and you're ticking your answers and you're showing where these marks are awarded. So you're ticking your answer with a different colour pen. Make sure your answer is nice and clear so the examiners can see clearly what you're doing. In the exam, you just need to write down 20, 44, 69, 76 and 80. You don't need to show the working out for these values. I've just put the working out in so you can see where the values are coming from. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 2 marks. M1 is a method mark. CF means cumulative frequency. You can see there is 1 error allowed for 1 mark. And allow means that you are allowed the answer of 80 or their follow through of 80. So there means your answer, and FT is a follow through mark. So for example, say you added the first 2 values together and you got 19 instead of 20, and then you carried on the same error all the way through, then you will still get 1 mark for that. So make sure you are nice and clear with your answers when you're adding the values up. You are allowed a calculator on this question, so use your calculator to check your answers are correct. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on drawing a cumulative frequency graph. Now here we've been given a cumulative frequency table on the left hand side, and you can see my previous video as to how to get the values for the cumulative frequency from the original cumulative frequency table. But we've got to look at the keywords, which are draw, a cumulative frequency graph, and it's going to be worth 3 marks. Now the key facts that you're going to need to be able to answer this question is you need to know that the word cumulative means add up. These have already been added up for us here, so these are my cumulative totals. And you're going to plot the time against the cumulative frequency. So you can see the axes have already been drawn out for you. You've got time in your x-axis, cumulative frequency in your y-axis. So you're going to be plotting the x-axis against the y-axis, or time against cumulative frequency. Once you've plotted all the points, and you will find there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values in the table, so you are plotting 6 coordinates. Once you've plotted those 6 coordinates, you need to join them together to make a smooth curve to get your full 3 marks for the question. Press pause, have a go at drawing out the table and the cumulative frequency graph, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done guys, hopefully you've managed to plot the points and draw a nice smooth curve. So to start with, I have got 5 and 25. So my time is 25 and I've got 5 for the cumulative frequency. So I go across 25 and then I go up 5. That's my first point. Then my next one, I go across 30, then I'm going to go up 20. So I go across to 30, then I go up to 20. Then I'm going to go from 35 to 44. So across 35, then I'm going to go up 44. That's my third point. Then I've got 40, 69, so I'm going to go across 40 up until I reach 69, plot the point. Then I've got 45, 76, so I'm going across 45 and up 76. And then I've got 50 and 80, so going across 50 and going up to 80. So we have got the points, and you can see they form an S shape. So you know you've got a cumulative frequency graph if you've formed this S shape and you've done it correctly. Now the starting point always starts from the 0 axis and it will be at the point 20. So it's one lot less from where you are and it always starts at 0. You're going to join the points together. Now in the exam you should really use freehand and join them together with a nice smooth curve. You can see here how I'm illustrating that curve going across here. The exam board will allow straight lines to be drawn. So you could draw a straight line, then another straight line, another straight line. So draw the straight lines between the different points. Okay, and you'll get 1 mark for plotting at the maximum time, so plotting at these values here. You'll get 1 mark for plotting the heights correctly, and the last mark is for joining the points together. Now you are better off by drawing a smooth curve. They are tricky to draw these curves by freehand, so make sure you know how to do your curve by freehand. If you struggle with a freehand curve, then you can join them together using a pencil and ruler. Just check your exam board to make sure whether you are or not allowed to join them correctly with using a pencil and ruler, or whether you need to be a smooth curve. So just check with your exam board. The mark scheme on this question shows there's 1 mark for plotting at the end of the intervals, 1 mark for the correct heights, and 1 mark for the smooth curve. It does say or straight line for this exam board, so just check your exam board whether it is a smooth curve or straight line segments. This tol here means a tolerance of half a square, so you're allowed to be half a square out to get the method marks. FT is a follow through mark from your method mark in part A. So if you made a mistake in your table on the first part and you got the table wrong, then you are allowed follow through marks later on. Remember, always check your answer. Give yourself ticks where the marks are awarded. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. On this question, we're looking at analysing cumulative frequency graph. So you can see here we have got a cumulative frequency graph already been drawn out for us. Again, the time against your cumulative frequency. The keywords in the question are that we've got for each comment. Okay, so we've got 2 comments, part 1 and part 2. We've got to decide if Reese is right or wrong, and you must give a reason why. So for part 1, you've got to say that 3/4 of the cyclists, or 80 cyclists, took more than 30 minutes to complete the race. And you've got to say, is Reese correct? And then you've got to give your reason why. So you either write correct or incorrect in here and then give your reason why afterwards. And that will be worth 2 marks. Then on the second part, we've got the longest time any of the 80 cyclists took will be 50 minutes. And again, you've got to say whether he's correct or incorrect and give your reason why. The first part is worth 2 marks, the second one is worth 1 mark, and you must give your reasons as well as being correct here. The key facts are that for 1 reason you get 1 mark, so if it's worth 2 marks you need to give 2 reasons. Here you need to give 1 reason because it is only worth 1 mark. Press pause, have a go at answering the question, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done guys. So in part 1 we're looking at 3/4 of 80. So we want to know 3/4 of 80 took more than 30 minutes. So to find 1/4 of 80, you're going to divide by 4, and then to find 3/4, we're going to times it by 3. You are allowed a calculator on this paper, but you can do this without a calculator. So 80 divided by 4, halve 80 and halve it again, so you get 40, 20. Then multiply that number by 3, gives you 60. So 3/4 of 80 is 60, and you get 1 mark for stating 60. Now this is on our cumulative frequency curve, so we need to look for 60 on our cumulative frequency curve to see how many cyclists there were. So we draw a line across at 60, then we draw a line down, and we can see here we're at 38 minutes. Now because we're at 38 minutes, it says 3/4 of the 80 cyclists took more than 30 minutes. So 38 is more than the 30 minutes given in the question. So that means that Reese is correct for your second mark. So you need to give a reason and you need to say whether he's correct or incorrect to get the 2 marks on this question. The next part, we're looking at the longest time. So the longest time, you can see here I've plotted at 50 and 80. So it looks like it is the longest value at 50, but this is taken from a cumulative frequency table where you're given values between 45 and 50. So because the last interval was between 45 and 50, we don't know exact values. So because we don't know exact values, we can't say that the race must have been 50 minutes. So it is an unknown value. It could have been anywhere between 45 and 50. It may be 50, but we cannot guarantee that. So that means Reese is wrong, and that is for 1 mark. So make sure that you're looking back at previous parts of the question, looking at the table, because the table showed you were between 45 and 50, and we plot at the top end of that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that their maximum value is 50. If you got this correct, give yourself a tick and show where the marks are awarded. So clearly mark where your answers are correct. Well done, guys. The mark scheme on this question shows where the 2 marks are awarded for. And the last one shows where the mark is awarded for here. It does say see appendix on the first part. So the appendix is right at the back of the mark scheme. So after all the normal answers for the mark scheme, as you can see here, later on you get something called your appendix. So make sure you've got written down that you've got the 60. You need to make sure whether you're saying it's right, true, or you're saying yes. So as long as you've given an answer, or this one here wrong, incorrect, false, any of those are correct. You must be separate from the fraction, so you must give a reason as well as the fraction, or the working out the fraction to give you 60. You must give a comment as well to get the 2 marks. For mark scheme here, this is the appendix. So you can see these are the number of marks. So you've got 1 mark if you gave these 2 reasons here on the left hand side. Later on, you can see there's 1 mark and no marks, 1 mark, no marks, or the other way around, 0 marks and 1 marks. So here, if you literally just got 60, you would get 1 mark. You can read through all these different valued reasons here, which ones will give you the marks and which ones won't. And you can see here they've been clearly labelled in your appendix. So make sure you know where the appendix is on the mark scheme and you know how to use it and have a look at it. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on interpreting a quadratic sketch. You can see here the key words are we're going to sketch this quadratic graph. So we know this is a quadratic graph because of the shape of the curve. It can either be upside down like you can see it here, or a typical type of quadratic is normally the other way around, which is the happy face. Here we have got the sad face. Okay, but as long as it follows this shape, it is a quadratic graph. Now we're told that the y-intercept is 15, so that means where we cross this y-axis here is at the point 15. And you've got to show that he could be correct, and this is worth 3 marks. Now the key facts to be able to answer this question, we need to know what a quadratic sketch looks like. So if it is a happy face, we get a positive x squared at the front of our quadratic. If it is a sad face, like what we've got here, we have got a negative value of x squared at the front of our graph. Now, any quadratic follows the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So this is the general form of any quadratic. This value here on the end, the c, will tell me the y-intercept. So this value here is what we need to calculate. And we need to show that this value of c is going to be 15 up here. Now we need to know about the roots of a quadratic. Now the roots are where you cross the x-axis. So these are called the solutions, where you cross your x-axis. And if I've got an equation where I've got x minus d and x plus e equals 0, okay, the roots of this equation are when x minus d equals 0, so that means x is equal to d, or x plus e equals 0, so x is equal to negative e. So in my case here, d is equivalent to the 5, so you're going to have to think about what you're going to put in here. And then the x is equal to negative e, that's equivalent to this negative 3. So these are the 2 roots that you're going to be substituting in. Now think about substituting these roots in. Think about the fact that the negative x squared, because the shape is a sad face, it's upside down. And remember, when you expand, the value c on the end is your y-intercept, and that's what you've got to show is 15. So press pause, have a go at working out the answer, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done, guys. Hopefully you've managed to show that the y-intercept is 15. So to start with, we're going to look at the roots. So we know that the root is at -3 and 5. So if you look here, if the root was at 5, so d is equal to 5, so x is equal to 5, that means x minus d, which is why I've got an x minus 5 because of this 5 here. I've also got another root of -3. So you can see here, here's my second root at -3. So x is equal to -3. That means x plus 3 is equal to 0. So these are my two roots, come from x plus 3, x minus 5 for 1 mark. So looking at my roots in the x-axis. Now we also know it is a negative x squared because of the shape of the curve. It is a sad face, it is upside down, it is sad. So on top of these two root values, I need to put a negative at the front here. And this is your second mark. So far I've got 2 marks for identifying where the roots will be as a quadratic and the negative at the front because it is a sad face. So to get the final mark, we have to show that the coordinate on the end, when you expand the brackets, will be plus 15. Now you can expand all the terms in the bracket by multiplying everything together and then simplifying it and then multiplying everything by -1, and then that should show that C is -15 on the end. But we could save ourselves some time and just think about which values will multiply to give the constant on the end. So the ones which will give the constant on the end are from multiplying the 3 by the -5. So 3 times by -5 is -15. But there's this -1 at the front, so we're expanding the last term. I've got a -1 times by a 3 times by a -5, which is going to give me 15, which is why the y-intercept could be 15. So he could be correct for 1 mark. So make sure you know exactly where the marks were awarded. Give yourself a tick and show where the marks were awarded. Use a different colour pen to mark your answers. Well done, guys. Tricky question, that is. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 3 marks. M2 means 2 method marks. M1 means 1 method mark. See the appendix, so right at the bottom of the exam paper and the mark scheme is something called the appendix. So if you go right to the end of your mark scheme and scroll to the end, you will see this section here, which is called your appendix. And this is just extra notation and extra help to see whether you have got the full marks awarded correctly. So you can see in here what happens if you put a -15 instead of a +15, what marks will be allowed for you in the exam. So make sure you have a quick look through all this so you can see where the marks were awarded and you know how they're awarded from the mark scheme. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on interpreting a quadratic sketch. The key words of this question are that we've got a sketch of a quadratic graph that you can see below. So here you can see the quadratic graph. And we're told that Frankie says that the y-intercept is 15. So this is where you cross your y-axis. So we're told this point is 15. Now we've got to explain why he may not be correct. And this is worth 2 marks. So the key facts we need to know for a quadratic sketch, if you have got a positive number in front of the x squared, you have got a graph that is a happy face. So it goes the opposite way round to this one. This one is a negative x squared, so the graph is upside down. So that means we have got a minus in front of our x squared term. So that's going to be really important when we're working out the equation of this graph. Any quadratic is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And c, this number here on the end, is where you cross the y-axis. So it's this point here. Now the roots of a quadratic, which is where you cross the x-axis, so these 2 points here at -3 and 5 are called the roots of the quadratic. And that means x minus d times by x plus e equals 0. So if I put x minus d equal to 0 and solve that, that means x is equal to d. So one of my roots is that x equals d, which is like the 5 part here. Or x plus e equals 0. So if I rearrange this and solve, x is equal to -e, which is like the -3 here. Now you need to think about using these facts here. Okay, remember it's a negative x squared. Remember c is the y-intercept, These are the roots, and you've got to work out why we may not be correct. Now remember, if you look back to my previous video, we showed that it may be correct. So 15 was the y-intercept. So this time, why is it not correct? So make sure you check the previous videos to know why it was correct. And now we're going to look at why it's not correct. Press play when you're ready to hear the video after you've had a go at answering the question. Well done, guys. Hopefully you've managed to get yourself an answer as to why this value may not be 15. So the roots, we're told, are 5 and negative 3. So we've got 5 and negative 3. That means D is equivalent to the 5. So that is x minus 5. And the negative 3 is equivalent to my negative e, which is x plus e, which is x plus 3. So these are my roots. Remember, the shape means we have got a negative at the front. So I've got a negative value. Now in my last video, we looked at multiplying the negative by the 3 times the negative 5, which gave me that plus 15. But we've got to work out why it might not be 15 this time. So we don't know exactly the equation of this curve. There could be a missing value at the front. So it could be a multiple of this equation. So I could put a magic k at the front, which could be any single number. So it could be the number 2, 3, 4, whatever number you chose, or you can generalize it and use the letter k. That will give you 1 mark if you've got this equation with a k at the front, or it could be in terms of a number. Now the last term of this expression now is we've got negative k times by the 3 times by the negative 5. So looking at multiplying these last two terms together, so 3 times negative 5 is negative 15, times by the negative k is going to give us a positive 15k. Now that means 15 times by any number. So we're not going to have k as being 1 because that's what we had last time. So if I pick k to be 2, 15 times 2 is 30, which means this point here is now 30, not 15. So this is why we may not be correct. It could be any value. I could have picked 3, 4, any different value. As long as you give an example and state that you may not be correct, we'll give you your second mark. Make sure you've ticked where your marks were awarded on the question, so give yourself a tick to show that you've got the correct marks and you know where to get the answers from for this question. The mark scheme of this question shows there are 2 marks. B1 means 1 method mark. The word integer means a whole number. So if you look through the mark scheme, you can see we've got the equation in terms of k, and that means you've got a multiple of 15. So these are the 2 reasons to get the 2 marks in the exam. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. In this question, we're going to be looking at product of prime factors. Now we've been given a really large number, and this number is 15,552 million, and we've got to write it as a product of prime factors in index form. And we're told that this number here is equal to 2 to the power of 7 times 5 to the power of 6 times 6 to the power of 5. And we've got to explain the mistake. And this is worth 1 mark. So we've got to look at this and say what is wrong with this. So first of all, we need to look at what the key words in this question mean so we can answer this question. So our first key fact is that the word product means multiply. So you can see here in the answer there are some multiplies. The prime numbers, so we're looking at prime factors. So the word prime, okay, this is any number that can be divided by 1 in itself. So 2 is the smallest prime number because 1 cannot be divided by itself. So 2 can be divided by 2 and it can be divided by 1. 3 can only be divided by 3 and it can be divided by 1. 5 can be divided by 5 and it can be divided by 1. All these numbers here can only be divided by themselves and 1. So these numbers here are prime and the list keeps going longer. So you need to look at these prime numbers and then think about the numbers that we've got in this answer here. Factors, these are numbers that go into another number. So for example, 10 goes into 20, so 10 is the factor of 20. Index form, this is when you write one number as a power to another. So for example, I've got a to the power of b. where a and b are both integers, and this means whole numbers. So you can look here, 2 to the power of 7 is written in index form. So basically this answer here is written in index form. Have a think about what these keywords mean. Have a look at the answer and then see if you can explain what the mistake is. Press pause, have a go at working out the answer, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done, guys. So this is only worth 1 mark. You can see there's lots of lines for your answer to go on. So we're going to see what we should have written in this answer space. So we're looking at this number here, this answer. You can see it's a product. So you can see I've got multiply. That means the product. Prime, I'm looking at the numbers. So these are the big numbers at the bottom need to be prime. So 2 is prime. Yes, it's in my list over here. 5, it's prime. It's in my list over here. Got 6. Look along here. It goes 2, 3, 5, 7. 6 is not a prime number. 6 can be divided by 1, 6, 2, and 3, which means that 6 is not prime. So for 1 mark, okay, you will get the answer of 6 is not prime, and that will give you your answer mark for 1 mark. Remember, always write your answer on the dotted line and give yourself a tick using a different colour pen to mark your answers. So that's all you needed to look at for the mistake on this question for 1 mark, looking for what this answer here is showing. The mark scheme shows that the answer was worth 1 mark. OE means or equivalent. So if you wrote something equivalent to 6 is not a prime number, then you would still get the method mark. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question of product of prime factors. We're going to be looking at the keywords in the question. And to start with, you can see we have got a really large number here. So this is 15,552 million. And you've got to write it as a product of prime factors in index form. So you can see here this number has been written as 2 to the power of 7 times 5 to the power of 6 times 6 to the power of 5. Now in part A you can see my previous video to see what was wrong with the question, and it was that this 6 here is not written in as a prime number. So part B says we have got to write this number as a product of prime factors in index form. So we've basically got to convert this 6 to the power of 5 to be in terms of a prime number. This is worth 2 marks in the exam. The key facts that you need to be able to answer this question are that the word product means multiply, so it's mentioned twice in the question. Prime numbers, you need to know what your prime numbers are. So the number 2 and 5 are prime from this question, but the 6 is not prime. So your prime numbers are 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, etc. They can only be divided by 1 on themselves. That's the definition of a prime number. So these are the first few. Factors are a number that goes into another number. So if you think of the number 15, the number 5 goes into the number 15. So 5 is a factor of 15. Index form means you're written as a number to the power of another number. So A and B are integers. So in this case, 2 to the power of 7 is written in index form. So we've got to write them all in index form, but we've got to make sure that this 6 becomes a prime number. And we're going to be needing to use some rules of indices. So the power rule with the bracket is if you've got x to the power of A all to the power of B is the same as x to the power of A times by B. And then the power rule for adding, you've got x to the power of A times by x to the power of B is equal to x to the power of A plus B. Any of these keywords or formulas that you're unfamiliar with, make sure you've written them down with your keywords and highlighted them and stick them in a bubble. These rules of indices are really important that you know how to use and apply them. Press pause, have a go at working out the answer, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done, guys. Hopefully you've managed to get yourself an answer. Now, as I said, the key part of this question was this 6 to the power of 5. Now, we know that 6 is the same as 2 times 3. So I can replace the 6 with 2 times 3. I'm now going to use this top rule here for indices, so I'm going to multiply the powers. So x to the power of a to the power of b is x to the power of a times b. Now here I've got no numbers after this 2 and after this 3. It's like there's a magic 1 here. So this is 2 to the power of 1 times 3 to the power of 1, which means I can do the same to both of the numbers. So I'm going to do 2 to the power of 1 times by 5. So I've got 1 times by 5, which is just going to be 5. And then I've got 3 to the power of 1 times by 5, and 1 times 5 again is 5. So I've got 2 to the power of 5 times 3 to the power of 5 gives you 1 mark. So you just need to put the power of 5 inside the brackets. From here, I can write out the whole answer, replacing the 6 to the power of 5 with 2 to the power of 5 and 3 to the power of 5. So the whole expression is 2 to the power of 7 times 5 to the power of 6 times 2 to the power of 5 times 3 to the power of 5. Now you'll notice that two of these numbers are the same, the two 2's. So we're now going to use my second rule down here, where I've got x to the power of a times by x to the power of b is x to the power of a plus b, where x is going to be the value of 2 because the 2's are the same, and a is going to be a 7 and b is going to be a 5, so I'm going to use that bottom rule. So just putting these two terms together, I've got 2 to the power of 7 times 2 to the power of 5. The 5 to the 6 stays put, and the 3 to the power of 5 also stays the same. Now here, using the bottom rule, I'm going to add the indices. So 7 plus 5 is 12. So I've got 2 to the power of 7 plus 5, and 7 plus 5 is 12, which gives you your second mark. Remember, always write your answer on the dotted line. Mark your answer, give yourself a tick to show where the marks were awarded for on the question, so you know clearly what your answer is, and make sure you've remembered to write down any key facts that will help you answer this question that you are familiar with. Well done, guys. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 2 marks available. M1 means 1 method mark for getting to the form of 2 to the power of 5 times 3 to the power of 5. Make sure you've marked your answer nice and clearly so you can see where the marks were awarded. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on highest common factor. The key words in the question are we've got a really large number, 15,552 million. It is written as a product of prime factors in index form. You can see that number has been written here as 2 to the power of 7, 5 to the power of 6 times 6 to the power of 5. You are told that 140,000 is the same as 2 to the power of 5 times 5 to the power of 4 times 7. And you've got to find the highest common factor, or HCF, of the two numbers, and this is worth 2 marks. Now your key facts that you need to be able to answer this question are we need to know that the word product means multiply. The prime numbers are 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19. These are just the first few. It is any number that can be divided by 1 in itself. You can see here that all these numbers here at the bottom are prime numbers. All of them except this one. So if you see back to a previous video, you will see why this one is not a prime number, and we will deal with that later. Factors are numbers that go into another number. So prime factors are prime numbers that go into another number. Index form means written in the power of a to the power of b, like all these numbers here are 2 to the power of 5. These are all written in index form. Highest common factor is the largest number that goes into both numbers. So we've got to find the largest number that goes into both of these two numbers. And the easiest way to do it is by using a Venn diagram, especially when the product of prime factors have been given. You can do it manually and just count up and work out which factors go into both numbers, but when you've got really, really large numbers like we have here, it is much easier to use a Venn diagram. Now a Venn diagram is a diagram where you've got 2 circles combined, and then you've got numbers in each of the circles. So the numbers which are common to both numbers go in the centre, and if you multiply these 2 numbers together, C times by D, this gives me the highest common factor. If you multiplied every single number that you can see here written in the two circles, multiply those together, that gives you the lowest common multiple. So that is the difference between highest common factor and lowest common multiple. In this question here, we're only interested in the highest common factor. Press pause, have a go at working out the answer, and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done guys, hopefully you've managed to have a think about how to work out what the highest common factor is of these two numbers. So we're going to start off by looking at 6 to the power of 5. Now we know 6 is the same as 2 times 3, and we can put that in brackets, and both of those numbers need to go to the power of 5. So we can see that 15,552 million is the same as 2 to the power of 7 times 5 to the power of 6, which was given to start with. And then the 6 is the same as 2 times 3, but both of these have got to be to the power of 5. You can see my previous videos to how to split this out quicker on a previous video. From here, we need to look at what is going to be common. So we're looking at things that are common. And you can look at here, I've got a 2 to the power of 5, and I've got a 2 to the power of 5. So we can see that 2 to the power of 5 in both of these terms is common, and that goes in the middle section. So this circle here on the left-hand side represents this really large number here, 15,552 million is the circle on the left. The circle on the right represents 140,000. So these two circles represent the two different numbers. Now you can see for both the numbers, 2 to the power of 5 on both the numbers was common to both, which goes in the centre. We're now going to look at the 5 to the power of 6. Now this one has got a 5 to the power of 6, and here we've got 5 to the power of 4. So if I write down what 5 to the power of 6 means, it means 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. And 5 to the power of 4 means 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. So this is 6 times, and this is 4 times. So we want to know what is common to both of these terms. So the one that is common, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 5s which are common to both. So that goes in the centre. The 4 5s go in the centre. But I've got 2 5s here left over on the one with the 5 to the 6. So on the bigger number here, the one which is on the left-hand side, I've also got a 5 squared left over. So that goes in the left circle. I've also got the 2 to the power of 7 is left over, and the 3 to the power of 5 is also left over. So these go in the left circle. The terms which are common go in the middle circle. And then on the right part over here, this is what is left on this second term here. So I've got 2 to the power of 5 we've already taken, 5 to the power of 4 we've already taken. We're just left with 7, so that goes in the outside circle here. We have got to work out the highest common factor. So to do that, we take the two middle terms here and we need to multiply them together, and that will give you your first method mark. So 2 to the power of 5 times by 5 to the power of 4 gives me 1 method mark. This is a calculator question, so just type this in on your calculator using the power buttons, and you will see that you get 20,000, and this will be your second mark on the question. So make sure you are clear that you understand how to draw out a Venn diagram and how to work out the difference, what the Venn diagram represents and which section is the highest common factor. Remember, if I'd have multiplied all these terms together, that would have given me the lowest common multiple. This is the easiest way to find the highest common factor or the lowest common multiple for really, really large numbers. It's unusual that you get such high numbers in the exam. Normally the numbers are slightly lower than this, but in this exam question they have used really large numbers. So you need to be able to use the Venn diagram to get the answer quickly. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 2 marks. B1 means 1 method mark for being able to use the answer 2 to the power of 5 times 5 to the power of 4, and the final answer was the 20,000. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on graphical inequality and area. The key words in the question are we've got the graph of y equals 2x plus 1, and you're told that this graph is drawn on the grid. So you can see the line here of 2x plus 1 is drawn for us. And we've got to work out the region R, which satisfies the inequalities. And these are the three inequalities. Y is less than or equal to 2x plus 1. Y is greater or equal to 5. And x plus y is smaller or equal to 13. And we've got to show that the region, or the area of the region R, is 12 centimetres squared. And this is going to be worth 6 marks. Now, all inequality questions are worth lots of marks, so they are something that's worth knowing how to do, and make sure you know how to do them well. Now, your key facts for this question are that, first of all, you've got to draw these lines. So the first one has already been drawn for us, y equals 2x plus 1. But you've got to draw these other two lines on here. And you've got to treat these signs as equal. So in between here, you think of this as an equal. So y equals 2x plus 1, that is what has been drawn. So you're going to draw y equals 5 and what x plus y equals 13. So you're going to treat them as equal signs. Remember, if you've got y equals to a value, that gives you a horizontal line. So here's your y-axis. So whatever value y equals, it is going to draw a horizontal line coming across. For y equals. If it was x equals, it would be a vertical line. But here we've got y equals, so it's going to be horizontal. Now, if you don't know how to draw the table, if you don't know how to draw the line, then you can use a table of values to plot. So take the x values to always be 0, 1 and 2. These are the three easiest values that you can use. And if you substitute these values into this equation, then you can work out the y values. And then once you've got the y values, you can plot the coordinates to draw the graph. Or you could work out the gradient and the y-intercept. So for example, on this equation here, I've got y equals 2x plus 1. The plus 1 is where I cross the y-axis. So this is my y-axis. You can see I cross at the point 1. The number in front of the x is called the gradient, and this is 2 in this case. That means for every 1 I go across, I go up 2 squares. So every 1 square across, I go up 2. 1 square across, I go up 2. That is what the gradient of 2 means. So the gradient is the difference in y's divided by the difference in x. So 2 divided by 1 is 2. So the gradient of this line is 2. It is how steep it is. It's too steep. And then it crossed the y-axis at this point here, 1. So if you prefer to think of it as using the gradient and the y-intercept, you can do that on this equation here. Or you could put the values into the table of values. Either way will help you draw this line here. Now you've got to decide whether you're going to be drawing a whole or solid line, like you can see here, or whether it will be dotted. Now if it's just greater than or less than, it's going to be a dotted line. But if it's greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, you draw a solid line. So in this case here, these have all got the equal to signs in, so they're all going to be solid lines like the one you can see here. You've then got to identify the region. Now to identify the region, if you put in a coordinate, and the easiest coordinate is to put in is the point 0, 0, then you're going to put that into the inequality and you're going to see if it is true. If it is true, that's the region you want. So then you shade the opposite side because that's the region you don't want. So you always shade the region not required, so you're left with R in the middle. Now shading and identifying the region is quite tricky. If your line goes through the point 0, 0, you can choose any coordinate. So if this line here had started and going through the point 0, 0, 0, 0 is not very helpful for me. So you could have just picked the coordinate 2, 1 or whichever coordinate you find useful to help you solve whether your inequality is true or not. But this is the easiest coordinate to use. Then you also need to know the formula for the area of a triangle, which is going to be half the base times the height. And that is the region R has got to be 12. So you've got to use this formula here to show that this region is 12. Now normally when you've got 3 lines drawn, a 3-sided shape is a triangle, so it is likely that you're going to be working out the area of the triangle. So that will give you a bit of a hint when you're drawing your lines as to which is the required region, because you're looking for a triangle. You're drawing 3 lines, it's got to be a triangle because you've got 3 sides to the triangle. Press pause. Have a go at working out the answer and then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done guys, hopefully you've had a good think and been able to draw this out and work out what these 3 lines are doing, identified the region R and then shown that R is 12 centimetres squared. So to start with, we're going to look at this top equation here, y equals 2x plus 1. Now we're going to look at putting in the coordinate 0, 0. So this is my coordinate here, the origin 0, 0. Now y is equal to 0, so I put y as 0. X is equal to 0, so 2 times 0 is 0. So I've got 0 is less than or equal to 0 plus 1. Is 0 less than 1? Of course it is. This is true. So this means this point here underneath the line is true. So I want the area underneath this line, which means I'm going to shade the area above the line. So that will give you 1 mark for shading above the line here for identifying the correct region. The next bit we're going to look at is this line y is equal to 5. Now the line y equal to 5 is a horizontal line and it crosses the y-axis at 5. So you can see here I wrote y is equal to some value, draws a horizontal line. So this one's really easy to draw, y is equal to 5. You get 1 more mark for drawing the line y is equal to 5. That is worth 1 mark. From here, you then need to look at, do we want above or below the line? So we want to know when y is greater or equal to 5. So greater than 5 has got to be above the line. So we don't need to substitute in the coordinate because when it's just equal to horizontal or vertical line, it just makes sense. So I want to know when y is bigger than 5. So here's my line y equals 5. So bigger than 5 is the area above. So I shade the region below because this is what I don't want. Okay, so I want this region above in here. So far, this little corner bit here is looking good for what I'm looking for my area. But I've got 1 mark here for the second shaded area, 1 mark for my first, and then the third for drawing this line. The next line we've got to draw is the trickiest. X plus y is equal to 13. Now you can do it by rearranging this equation and looking at the gradient and the y-intercept. We're going to do it by using the table of values first, and then I'll talk through the gradient and intercept so you can choose which one you prefer. Now if our x is equal to 0, 0 plus something has got to be equal to 13. So 0 plus 13 equals 13. So the missing value here is just 13. So if x is 0, y is 13. We could do the same for 1 and 2. So if x is equal to 1, 1 plus something is equal to 13. 1 plus 12 equals 13. So the missing value was 12. And we do the same for 2. So 2 plus something is equal to 13. Take 2 from both sides. 13 take away 2 gives me 11, or 11 plus 2 gives me 13. So these are my points I'm going to be plotting. So we need to plot the point 0, 13. So that means you go along the corridor 0 and then you go up to 13. So there's your first point you're plotting. The next one we go along the corridor once and then we go up the stairs 12. So go across 1 and then up 12. This is the second point. And then we go across 2 and up 11 for the third point. So across 2, up 11 gives me 3 points. You only need 2 points to identify a straight line, but 3 will check that your straight line is correct and all these points are in a line, then you have done it correctly. Once you've got these 3 coordinates plotted, just draw a straight line to continue from one axis to the other. You will spot that if you've got an equation where it's x plus y equals to any value, it will always go through the number 13 on both axes. So whatever number is here, it will be exactly the same, and it is a line that goes diagonally between these 2 points here. Now if we rearrange this equation to give me y is equal to 13, take x from both sides, gives me y is equal to 13, take away x. You can see that the y-intercept is 13, so crosses up here. And my gradient, when I take this over to the other side, the x becomes minus 1. So that means for every one I go across, I've got a gradient of minus 1, so I go down 1 this time. So my gradient is negative 1. So it's got a line slope in the opposite direction because it's got a negative gradient. Doesn't matter which way you plot the graph, as long as you can get this graph drawn, that will give you your 4th mark. Next, we need to identify which region. So we're going to take this equation here and we're going to substitute in the point 0, 0. So x is 0, y is 0, looking at this coordinate here. 0 plus 0 is less than 13. Is that true? Of course it is. 0 is less than 13, which means the point here is true. I want this point here, so the area under this line here is the area I want. So the area I don't want is the area above, so this is your 5th mark for identifying this mark here. this area here, which means my region is this area here, this section here in the middle of a triangle. As we expected, we were looking for a triangle because you've been given 3 lines, 3 sides, which means you've got a triangle. Now we've got to use this formula for the last mark to work out the area of the triangle. So the area of a triangle is a half the base times by the height. So we need to identify the base, which is this distance across here. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares. So we've got 6 squares across. And then vertically going up is the vertical height. So a perpendicular height, which is this distance here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 squares up. The formula for the area of a triangle is a half the base times the height. So a half of 6 times by 4. You are allowed a calculator for this question, but a half of 6 is 3 times by 4 will give you the 12 centimetres squared, which is shown for 1 mark. So this is where the last mark comes from. Remember, mark your answer, give yourself a tick for where the marks were awarded so you can clearly see where you get the full 6 marks for this question. Inequalities always come up on one of the exam papers. Make sure you know how to do your graphical inequalities and you understand how to work out the regions. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 6 marks. B1 is a method mark. M1 dependent, or dep means dependent, it means it depends on where you shaded your region. So you can see here on the left hand side, this is the correct diagram. But if you identified the wrong triangle, say you identified this triangle over here on the left-hand side, and you worked out the area of this triangle, you would get a method mark for doing it for the area of your triangle. OE means or equivalent. The word condone means allow. So if you don't have a ruler in the exam, which I don't recommend, make sure that you bring your ruler to the exam, but they say a good freehand line, which can be dashed or solid. So if you made a mistake, you can still get a method mark that is still allowed. So make sure you've read the guidance, which is allowed and not allowed on the exam. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on completing the square. Now, it is a tricky concept to be able to complete the square, and it never tells you in the question that you are completing the square. But as soon as you see something written in this form here, like x minus a all squared minus b, you should be thinking completing the square. Now, the key words are the word right. The question you've got x squared minus 8x plus 9, and then you've got to write it in the form x minus a all squared minus b, and this tells us that we're completing the square for 3 marks. The key facts are that when you complete the square, okay, this is the form you're going to be getting here. When you start off with any quadratic, before you complete the square, the coefficient of x squared must always be 1. So if you've got a value in front of this x squared, you must factorise out and make sure the coefficient of x squared is 1. Now the coefficient is the number in front of the x squared. Now if I take a factor of a outside the front of this expression that I've got here, I've got a bracket and then I've got x squared plus b over a. So if I take a factor of a out of the first 2 terms only, I end up with this expression here. So I've got a bracket x squared plus b over a times by x. Because if you expanded this, you get a times x squared is ax squared, and b over a times x all times by a gives me bx. The plus c just stays the same on the end. Now from here we're going to complete the square. Now when we complete the square we have to take this expression here and we're going to halve the coefficient. Now it will be easier with numbers because you'll just have a number, for example 6, and then you'll halve your 6 and that will be the number that appears here. But we don't know what this number is, so I'm just generalising it so it looks a little bit more complicated, but it is the same process. So half of b over a is the same as b over 2a. So we just divided this expression by 2. The a is outside the front, and I'm now using a square bracket to show a difference between the 2 brackets. So I've got x plus b over 2a all squared. It is always subtract in between here, always subtract. And then whatever term you've put here after the x is the term you're going to subtract here. So it's always minus this n term squared. So in this case, it's b over 2a all squared, plus your value of c on the end. From here, we're then going to multiply back in the a. So the a comes at the front here, and then you've got a times by x plus b over 2a all squared. When I expand this bit here, I've got b over 2a all squared. I can square the top term, which is the numerator, and square the denominator. So b squared is the numerator, and then I have got over 4a squared, because 2 squared is 2, a squared is a squared. Then I'm going to times by an a. So when I multiply a in the numerator divided by the a squared in the denominator, I'm left with an a in the denominator, which leaves me with minus b squared over 4a. The plus c just stays the same on the end. Now, when this is in terms of numbers, you'll be able to add these two terms together. Now, I want you to press pause, have a go at working out the question here, x squared minus 8x plus 9. It is easier than the example I've given on the right-hand side because the coefficient of x squared is always 1. Press play when you've got an answer and you're ready to see how to get the marks. Well done, guys. So, hopefully you've managed to spot that we're going to be halving this number in front of the x. So half of minus 8 is going to be negative 4. So I've got x take away 4 all squared. It is always subtract. So this subtract here in the middle is always there. And the number you've got here in the purple, the pinky colour, we've got minus 4. And then I've got a minus 4 here. So this minus 4 is always squared as well. Plus 9, which is the number on the end. So whatever term is here after the x is the same term that appears over here. Now I've got to square this minus 4. So negative 4 times negative 4 is going to be positive 16. So I'm going to end up with x minus 4 all squared, take away 16, plus 9. Then you just need to think about your number line. This is the same as 9 take away 16, or starting at negative 16 and add on 9. For each stage we've done so far, you will get one method mark for getting the x minus 4 all squared. You will get your second method mark for getting the minus 16. Okay, so your first method mark comes from this x minus 4 all squared here. Then you've got your minus 16. And that gives me x minus 4 all squared minus 7 for your third and final mark. Remember, always write your answer on the dotted line. Make sure your answer is nice and clear. Remember to put this squared value in here, so it's x minus 4 all squared with your minus 7 on the end, so get the 3 marks. Remember, give yourself a tick to show where the marks were awarded for the question, so you know where to get the marks in the exam. This is a question on completing the square and by solving by completing the square. This follows on from part A, and we're going to be looking at part B for this question. The key words in the question is you using your answer to part A to solve. Now the answer to part A was x minus 4 all squared take away 7. Please see my previous videos how to get this answer. Now we're looking to solve this, and we're putting this expression equal to 0. You must give your answer in exact form, so that means using surds, and you must show you're working out. This is for 2 marks. The key facts you need are that when you're told that you're completing the square, we must have a coefficient of 1. In our question, we do have a coefficient of 1. So the number in front of this x squared here in the question has got a value of 1 at the front. When I take a factor of a outside the front to get a generalised term here, I have got a bracket x squared plus b over a lots of x. So if I multiply these both by a times x squared gives me that top term, ax squared. A times b over a lots of x gives me bx. From here, I need to take the number in front of the x, which is the coefficient of x, and b over a, and I'm going to halve that. So dividing b over a by 2 leaves me with b over 2a. This is the number that goes in the bracket squared. It will always be that. So x plus half of the coefficient of x, all squared. Then it's always subtract that same number squared. So this is b over 2a in this case, all squared plus c. Now if I expand b over 2a all squared, I get b squared over 4a squared, because I could just square the numerator and the denominator separately. Now by squaring these, I can then times them by a, because there's an a outside the front of this square bracket. Now a times 1 over a squared cancels down to leave me with 1 over a, which means when I expand it, I get a lots of x bracket b over 2a all squared minus b squared over 4a, because the a and the a squared in the denominator cancel to leave me with 4a, plus your c. From here, I need to solve to find the value of x. So I'm going to add b squared over 4a to both sides, and I'm going to subtract c from both sides to get rid of these two terms here. From here, I now need to divide both terms by a to get rid of this a at the front here, because this is times by a, so I'm going to divide by a. So b squared divided by 4a divided by a will just be b squared over 4a squared, and then divided with c by a is just minus c over a. Now I need to get rid of this squared term. The opposite to the square is square root, so I'm going to take the square root of what was on the right hand side. Remember, when you take the square root, it is plus or minus the square root value. Then I need to get rid of this b over 2a. The opposite to plus b over 2a is subtract b over 2a. So x is equal to minus b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared over 4a squared minus c over a. And this is the generalised expression from any quadratic. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 will always come down in this form. Have a go at looking at the question we've got. Okay. Remember, when the question says use exact form, that means we're going to be working with surds, and this part here underneath the square root is where the surd is occurring. So we're going to leave our answer with that square root there. That's what exact form means. Press pause, have a go at working out the answer, and then press play when you're ready to hear. Well done, guys. So hopefully you've managed to put this expression equal to 0, because we worked out in part A the answer was x minus 4 all squared minus 7, and we put that equal to 0 because we had the expression x squared minus 8x plus 9, and we knew that factorised by completing the square into x minus 4 all squared minus 7. I now need to get rid of this minus 7. The opposite to take away 7 is plus 7. So I'm going to get x minus 4 all squared is equal to 7, and that will give you your first mark out of the 2 marks. From here, I need to get rid of that squared. So the opposite to squaring is square root. Remember, when you square root, you must put plus or minus at the front. So I've got plus or minus root 7. Then I just need to get rid of this negative 4. The opposite to negative 4 is plus 4. So x is going to be 4 plus or minus root 7 for your second mark. Now we need to write this in terms of the two answers on the answer box. So that is the same as 4 plus root 7 or 4 minus root 7 for your second mark. These are where your 2 marks were awarded on the question. Make sure you've written them nice and clearly on the answer line. The mark scheme shows there are 2 FT means follow through marks. M1 is for getting to the stage of x minus 4 all squared equals their 7. Now the word their means using the answer you got to part A. So if you got part A wrong and you used your answer, then you will still get a method mark. FT means follow through. And the answer says you get 0 if you only put down the answer. Now the reason you will only get 0 on this question is because it is a calculator question and it's on the calculator paper. And your calculator, or some calculators, can solve quadratic equations using your calculator. So because your calculator will solve the question for you, then there is no method marks by completing the square, which is what the examiner wants you to do. So you must use the method required in this question by completing the square to solve, not by just typing it into your calculator and getting an answer. So make sure you know how to do it without a calculator, even though it is on a calculator paper. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at math. This is a question on similar shapes, specifically looking at the volume and surface area. The keywords in the question are we've got two shapes A and B that are mathematically similar. A has got a surface area of 12 centimetres squared and a volume of 8 centimetres cubed. B has a surface area of 75 centimetres squared. We've got to work out the volume of pyramid B, and you must show you're working out. This question is worth 4 marks. The key facts you're going to need: for the ratio of length, it's 1 to L. The ratio of area is 1 to L squared, and that includes surface area. And the volume of ratio, or the ratio volume, is 1 to L cubed. And these 3 facts are going to be really helpful when we're going to be looking at the ratios between the different surface areas, volumes, and the length. Press pause, see if you could use these 3 facts to work out how to answer the question, then press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done guys, hopefully you've managed to look at these facts and split up your ratios. So to start with, we're looking at the shape A and B, and we're told in A and B that the surface areas are 12 and 75. So these are the key facts that we've got to start with about the surface area. So make sure you read the question carefully and look for the facts where you have got the same information. So here I've got 2 bits of surface area. Now we're told that the volume of A is equal to 8. Okay, so we're told that the volume of A is equal to 8, but we've got to then work out the volume of B. Now to be able to do this, we need to simplify this first ratio that we've got, 12 to 75, to be in the form 1 to something, because we need to know the ratio of the area, which is going to be in the form 1 to L squared. So we need to work out what L is. So at the minute, we've got a ratio of 12 to 75. So to get 1 at the front here, to go from 12 to 1, we're going to divide by 12. So to get from here to here, I've got to divide by 12. So I've got to do the same to the 75. Now you are allowed a calculator on this question. So you could literally type in 12 over 75 on your 75 over 12 on your calculator, and that will cancel down to 25 over 4 for 1 mark. If you left your answer as 12 over 75, 75 over 12, or cancel it down to a decimal, you will get the same method mark. From here, we know that the surface area ratio is in the form 1 to L squared, which means that that 25 over 4 must be equal to L squared, because it is in the form 1 to L squared, so 25 over 4 must be L squared, because my surface area ratio is 1 to L squared. Now to get L on its own, we need to get rid of this squared term. So the opposite of squaring is square root. So I've got to take the square root of 25 over 4. Now we could use surds and simplify this separately. So this is the same as 25, the square root of, divided by the square root of 4. The square root of 25 is 5, square root of 4 is 2, which is the same as 5 over 2 for 1 mark. So we've got half our marks so far for this question. 1 for working out the ratio between the 2 surface areas, and then 1 for working out the length ratio, which would be 1 to 5 over 2. From here, I now need to look at the volume. So the volume ratio is 1 to L cubed. So we're told this with our 3 facts over here on the right hand side to start with. and we're told the volume of A is 8 centimetres cubed. But we know the ratio has got to be 1 to L cubed, where L is 5 over 2. Now 5 cubed is 125, 2 cubed is 8, so we can work this out without a calculator. So you should know your cube numbers up to 5 cubed without a calculator. Now for doing 1 to 5 over 2 all cubed, that gives you your third mark for the question. We now need to think about our volume. Now we're going from 1 and we've got to go to 8. So we've got to think, how do I get from 1 to 8? I'm going to multiply by 8, which means I do the same to the right hand side. Now my 125 divided by 8 times by 8 is just going to leave me with 125. You can type it in your calculator to check that you get the right answer. And that is where your fourth mark comes from. Remember to write your answer of 125 on the dotted line to make sure your answer is nice and clear. Remember, tick where the marks are awarded for, so use a different colour pen to mark your answers and give yourself a tick where the answers are awarded. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 4 marks. M3 means 3 method marks, OE means all equivalent, M2 is 2 method marks, M1 is 1 method mark. SC1 means if you've got an answer of 125 with no or insufficient working, you will only get 1 mark for the answer because the question said you must show your working out. So if it says show your working out, please make sure you do, otherwise you won't get the full marks for this. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. This is a question on using sine rule and trigonometry. The key words in the question are we've got an angle A to X to C, which is 90 degrees. You can see has been marked with a right angle here, a little rectangle to show it's 90 degrees. The length B to C is 7.5, again highlighted in the diagram. Angle A to B to C, again is in your diagram, 32 degrees. And A to C to B is 43 degrees that you can see in your diagram. You've got to work out the length A to X, which is the distance from here to here, and you must show your working out for 6 marks. Now the key facts you're going to need are that angles in a triangle add up to 180. So we've been given 2 angles in this big triangle. You could work out the third angle here to work out angles in a triangle added up to 180. You will also need to use the sine rule, where you've got little a over sine capital A equals little b over sine capital B, where the little a and the little b are the sides. So these are sides on your non-right angle triangle, and the capital A and the capital B are angles. So they could be any of the angles that are given on the opposite pair. Then we're also going to need some trigonometry. So it could be SO, CAT or TOA. So you've got to identify which one it is, SO, CAT or TOA, when you're looking at the right angle triangle here to help us work out this length. So I've just picked the first one here for SO, S-O-H. Remember the one that's in the middle goes at the top. This line between here means divide, and the one between S and H means multiply. Now you need to cover up the one that you're looking for. So if I wanted to find the opposite, I'm left with an S and a H, and this line here means multiply. So this means sine of the angle times by the hypotenuse, or I can write the opposite as the hypotenuse times sine of the angle. It doesn't matter which order you do that in. So you're going to have to identify which one of these formulas it is. There are actually 9 formulas across the SO, CAT and TOA, 3 for each of them, depending on whether you want to find an opposite, a hypotenuse, the angle or the adjacent. You've got to determine which one you need to use. Now press pause, draw out the diagram, make sure you've labelled up which bits you want to find and you've shown your working nice and clearly to get the 6 marks. Press play when you're ready to hear the answer. So first of all, we're going to look at working out this angle here, y. Because if I work out this angle here, y, I can then use the sine rule because I've got an angle and I've got a side, and I've got an angle and I've got a side, which means I've got a side and an angle within this right angle triangle, which then means I can use trigonometry. So ultimately, we want to work out the length A to C. So to help us do that, Okay, we're first of all going to look at angles in a triangle. So 32 plus 43 plus my y is going to equal to 180 degrees. So to get y on its own, I need to do the opposite to plus 32, which is take away 32, and the opposite to plus 43, which is take away 43. From here, you can type this in your calculator, and y will be 105 degrees. So this angle at the top is going to be 105 degrees. From here, I'm going to use the sine rule. So the side, which is what I require, okay, is going to be little a. So this is the side I'm requiring to find. So this is going to be little a divided by sine of the capital A, which is going to be the angle. So these come as pairs opposite each other. So here's little a, here's capital A. Then the other two pair I know are these ones here. So it's going to be the length, which is 7.5, divided by sine of the angle, which we know is 105. If you wrote this, we get our second mark. So the first mark was identifying 105 for this top angle. Second mark for using the sine rule with the values that you've got. We then need to get rid of this divide by sine 32. So the opposite to divide by sine 32 is multiply. So A is going to be 7.5 divided by sine of 105 times by sine 32 for your third mark. You then just need to type this in on your calculator. This is a calculator question, so literally type these values in on your calculator and you will find you get 4.114 and the numbers carry on, and this is for your fourth mark. You will need to use the entire of this value here when we're going to be using the trigonometry in a minute to work out the distance A to x. So far we have got 4 out of 6 marks. Now we're now going to be looking at this right angle triangle here between A, X and C. We know the length from A to C. We know the angle in between here is 43 and we want to work out this side here. So we know the side that is opposite the right angle is always called the hypotenuse. We want to find this side here from A to X, and this is opposite the angle that has been given, so this is called the opposite. If you look over here, we've got saw, cat or toa. So the one that uses the opposite and the hypotenuse is the first one here for sine. So we're using saw, and you can see this triangle here has been drawn out for us. Now I want to find the opposite. So you cover up the opposite and you're left with S times by H, which means sine of the angle times your hypotenuse, or you can write it as hypotenuse times sine of the angle. The reason I write it this way round is because when you type it in on your calculator, you get a bracket appear, and then you could get a second bracket, and it gets a bit confusing with the brackets with the calculator. So if you've written the hypotenuse first, it means exactly the same thing. So from here, we've got to put the values into the formula. So the opposite is going to be A to X, is going to be my hypotenuse, which is the length A, which is 4.114. Remember, don't round that value. And then times by sine of the angle which is given, which is sine of 43. And this is your fifth mark. From here, we literally just need to type this in the calculator. So you should press the answer button times by sine of 43, press equals, and you get 2.8 for your sixth and final mark. Remember, always write your answer on the dotted line to make sure your answer is nice and clear. And remember to mark your answer and tick to show where the 6 marks were awarded for this question, to show how many marks you would have got on this question. The mark scheme of this question shows there are 6 marks. M1 stands for 1 method mark. M2 stands for 2 method marks. OE means or equivalent. A1 means 1 answer mark. SC3 means if you've got an answer of 2.8 to 2.81, which is the final answer, with no or insufficient working, you get a maximum of 3 marks because the question said you must show your working out. If you've got an answer of 4.11 or 4.115, you will get 2 marks, so SC2 means 2 method marks for no or insufficient working if you just got to this stage. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to share, like and subscribe. Please follow Get Great at Maths on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook and X. What do you want to see next on Get Great at Maths? Please comment below. See you next time.